Chapter 663. This was indeed the case. When Lu Yi pushed open the second door and entered Immortal Essence City, he had noticed something strange. Lu Ye's entire body seemed to be an empty shell. At first, she thought that Lu Yi had encountered some kind of mishap and burst into tears, but soon realized that things were not as serious as she thought. Because she and Hupo were still alive, which meant that Lu Yi was still alive. However, the situation was not optimistic. Lu Ye's aura was very weak, so weak that it was almost impossible to perceive it without paying attention. Over the past few days, Yi had tried all kinds of methods to wake Lu Yi up, but to little avail. At this moment she clearly felt that Lu Yi had returned. That aura, which was so weak that it could be annihilated at any time, was growing at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the empty shell now had a soul. She constantly called out Lu Ye's name, her pleading voice penetrating through the invisible barrier and reaching straight to Lu Ye's heart, causing ripples to appear in his mind. As the ripples spread, Lu Ye's consciousness quickly recovered and he gradually understood his situation. After an unknown period of time, he finally regained control of his body and opened his eyes with difficulty. At a glance, he saw Yi kneeling in front of him, her face full of anxiety and worry. Her eyes were red, and if it were not for her spirit body, she would have burst into tears long ago. Lu Yi. Their eyes met and Yi called out in surprise, "How are you? What happened?" Lu Ye's lips wriggled and after trying for a long time, he finally spoke in a hoarse voice, "Don't worry." Originally, he wanted to say a few words of comfort to Yi, but at this moment his control over his body was unprecedentedly weak, making it difficult for him to say anything more. Fortunately, this was the guest room of Heavenly Secret Commerce Union, so there was no danger. If he encountered such a situation in the wild, he would have been doomed. Closing his eyes, he continued to adjust his condition. Time passed and gradually, the incompatibility between his body and soul eased a lot. At this moment, Lu Yi could not help but have the illusion that he had regained control of his body after being ill for a long time. Remembering Ji Yuan's previous words, he quickly took out the jade bottle full of soul water from his storage space and swallowed a drop. Lu Yi originally felt a little tired after the return of his divine soul, but after the effects of the soul water, this mental exhaustion quickly melted away. He let out a long sigh of relief. The most difficult moment had finally passed. Yi had been standing guard at the side, and Hupo was also looking at him worriedly. Lu Yi raised her hand and rubbed Hupo's head. She looked at Yi and said, "It's okay now. What the hell is going on? Did something go wrong with your cultivation? Did you go berserk?" Yi's imagination was running wild. Qi deviation was something that rarely happened to the cultivators of 9 regions, because the cultivation of cultivators was, after all, a step-by-step process. As long as one didn't take the risk to try any special cultivation method, very few people would suffer from Qi deviation. It's a long story. Lu Yi sighed. Who would have thought that he would enter the Immortal Essence City and participate in a war against the Zerg race in the Immortal Essence City when he decided to sharpen himself in the Mirage Realm? In front of Yi there was no need to hide anything. Lu Yi briefly recounted what he had encountered before. When she heard that Lu Yi had entered the Immortal Essence City again, and that the situation in the Immortal Essence City was completely different from the last time they entered, and even that the whole city contained a huge secret, Yi was very surprised. Especially when she heard that Lu Datong, Yu Qing and others, in order to escort Lu Yi back to the stronghold, one by one without hesitation, the little girl couldn't help but turn red. When she heard that the spirit body in the Immortal Essence City was immortal, and that the annihilated butcher team was resurrected, the little girl smiled. In short, the city lord of the Immortal Essence City said that my cultivation base has not yet reached the Divine Sea Realm, so if my divine soul leaves my body for a long time, it will cause the divine soul and the body to be incompatible. He asked me to use the soul water to stabilize my divine soul recently, so there's no big problem. Yi nodded. Then you have to take a good rest for a while. Lu Yi nodded and touched his stomach. I'm a little hungry. Yi quickly got up. I'll have someone bring in some food. Saying so, she left the guest room. The service of the Tianji Business Alliance was still very good. The cultivators who stayed here had almost everything they wanted. In a short while, delicious food was brought in. Of course, there was also fresh demonic beast meat, which was for Hupa. One person and one tiger swept away the clouds and ate to their heart's content. Lu Yi took out a few jade bottles, filled them with soul water, and handed them to Yi. Yi herself was a spiritual body. Although she could become stronger with the help of the amber, with the help of the soul water, her divine soul could continue to become stronger. It could be said that the soul water was more useful to her than Lu Yi. To strengthen the divine soul, one could use the soul water, and to strengthen one's body, one could use the dragon scales. These two things were the most important foundation for every cultivator. A strong foundation was the capital that allowed Lu Yi to continuously kill enemies of a higher realm. Moreover, a strong foundation could also make cultivation easier, thus forming a virtuous cycle. After eating and drinking to his heart's content, Lu Yi sat upright and closed his eyes to rest. He didn't cultivate nor did he read any books. After an unknown period of time, Yi's voice suddenly sounded, "Lu Yi." Lu Yi was startled and hurriedly opened his eyes, only to find that his vision was very strange. He didn't know when he had flown up, but he was now a few feet above the ground. Yi looked at him worriedly. Hupo also widened his eyes, looking at himself for a while, then looking to the side. Lu Yi followed Hupo's gaze and saw an extremely familiar figure. When he looked again, Lu Yi jumped in fright. That familiar figure was clearly him. What was going on? Lu Yi didn't know what was going on, but his vision suddenly distorted, as if there was an irresistible force pulling him. His entire body sank down into his own body. Slowly opening his eyes, Lu Yi slowly came to his senses. His divine soul had just left his body again, and it was without him noticing. Jiyuan was right. His cultivation had yet to reach the divine sea, and his divine soul had left his body for a long time, causing his body and divine soul to be incompatible. If Yi hadn't shouted just now, he wouldn't have noticed at all. However, this wasn't a big problem in the end. Over the next few days, Lu Ye's soul inexplicably left his body several times. Sometimes it was while meditating, sometimes it was while walking. As he walked, he heard a thud behind him. When he turned around, he saw that it was his own body that had fallen to the ground. More often than not, he suddenly lost control of his own body, and his body's movements became uncoordinated. These few days' encounters were somewhat bizarre. Not to mention Cloud River tier, even true Lake tier and Divine Sea tier cultivators might not encounter such a thing. This kind of unforeseen event had a great impact on cultivators. Cultivators often fell into battles, and if this kind of thing suddenly happened during a battle, no matter how many lives they had, it wouldn't be enough. Lu Yi would swallow a drop of soul water every day to stabilize his divine soul. After a few days, the frequency of this kind of unforeseen event became lower and lower, until it didn't appear again. Lu Yi was still worried and stayed in the Tianji Business Alliance for a few more days. Only then did he confirm that the situation of his divine soul suddenly leaving his body would not happen again. He could feel that his divine soul and body had merged again at this moment. He could also feel that his divine soul had become stronger after the experience in Immortal Essence City. No matter what, in Immortal Essence City, he had soaked in the soul pool once again. For other cultivators, the strengthening of their divine soul was undoubtedly a good thing. In the beginning, Lu Yi was also happy. Cultivating until now, he had relied on the strength of his divine soul to have advantages that other cultivators didn't have. For example, when he encountered a sudden attack, he could sense and react more quickly. Another example was the Heart's Eye secret technique taught by Xiao Liang. If his divine soul wasn't strong enough, he wouldn't have been able to learn it so quickly. However, Lu Yi gradually felt that something was wrong. The strength of his divine soul was too strong, and it was about to exceed the level of his cultivation by a big realm. This was not necessarily a good thing. If the physical body was a container and the soul was the water contained in the container, then the growth of an ordinary cultivator was the growth of the container and the amount of water it contained. No matter how much the cultivator grew, the physical body was the container that could contain his soul. But he was different. The growth of his divine soul was faster than the growth of his body. In short, the container of the body was carrying a volume that shouldn't belong to the container, and it was also bearing a pressure that shouldn't be borne. The most serious consequence might cause the container to break. The intuitive manifestation was that the container was broken, or the water in the container overflowed. The reason why this situation hadn't happened until now was mainly because Lu Ye's physique was strong enough. For a long time, he had improved his physique with the help of the qi and blood in the dragon scales, making his physique comparable to a body cultivator of the same level. He would often eat some demon beast flesh and blood to supplement his own qi and blood with the help of the gluttonous meal. In the cultivation world of 9 regions, there had never been a situation like Lu Ye's. Perhaps some people's divine soul was stronger than their physical body, but it had never exceeded the exaggeration of a big realm. Therefore, after his physical body and divine soul were reunited, Lu Yi faintly noticed the hidden dangers in his body. It was actually very simple to solve this hidden danger. He just had to improve his cultivation and expand the volume of the container. Originally, he had this opportunity. More than 300,000 battle points could be exchanged for more than 20 golden spirit sticks, which could raise his cultivation to the Cloud River Realm 8th or 9th order in one fell swoop. However, all the battle points he obtained in Immortal Essence City had been exchanged for soul water. In the long run, the value of soul water was much greater than the golden spirit sticks, but in the end, distant water couldn't quench immediate thirst. Fortunately, Lu Yi knew a place that could quickly improve his cultivation. To be continued. Chapter 664. Lu Yi had planned on taking a look at that place ever since he entered the Cloud River battlefield. However, in the beginning he did not have a particularly good understanding of the situation in the Cloud River battlefield. His cultivation was not high either, so he did not act rashly. Of course, the main reason was that he had not made sufficient preparations. He was unable to maximize his benefits in that place. Spiritual pills and spiritual stones were not particularly useful in that place. What was truly useful were things that could recover the power of the soul. Originally, he planned on going after he had made some preparations, but he could not wait any longer. The main reason was that there was no need for him to make any preparations. He had already obtained what he needed the most: the 100 Formation Tower. This was the holy land of the formation cultivators of the 9 provinces, as well as the place where formation cultivators cultivated their path of formations. Rumor had it that the 100 Formation Tower was something left behind from the previous epoch of cultivation. It had a total of 100 floors and each floor had a different trial. Each floor was more difficult than the last. If one could pass the trial, they would receive a reward from the heavenly secrets, and all of the rewards were related to formations. This attracted countless cultivators from the 9 provinces to enter the 100 Formation Tower to train and hone their path of formations. However, the complete 100 Formation Tower had ceased to exist a long time ago. No one knew what had happened to the 100 Formation Tower. Now, the 100 Formation Tower had been split into 3 parts. The first part, which was the bottommost part, was in the Mist Province's Heaven Expanse sect. Lu Yi had once received an invitation from a cultivator of the Heaven Expanse sect called Zhao to visit the Heaven Expanse sect's encampment as a guest. Afterwards, he entered the main sect of the Heaven Expanse sect and made it through 33 floors in a single go, which led to a great uproar in the entire sect. Before challenging the 100 Formation Tower, Lu Yi had some attainments in the path of formations, but it was not to an exaggerated degree. However, ever since he challenged the 100 Formation Tower of the Heaven Expanse sect, Lu Yi's attainments in the path of formations had basically skyrocketed. This was also why he was able to act as he pleased in the Spirit Stream battlefield. There had never been a Spirit Stream cultivator with such great attainments in the path of formations. Infiltrating the defensive formations of other encampments was as simple as eating and drinking. Coupled with Lu Yi's strength that surpassed cultivators of the same level, his existence was basically a nightmare for the various sects of the Myriad Demon Ridge on the Spirit Stream battlefield. The Myriad Demon Ridge's side could only rejoice that Lu Yi had long since advanced to the Cloud River realm and left the Spirit Stream battlefield. Otherwise, who knew what would happen to the Spirit Stream battlefield? It could be said that Lu Yi's current attainments in the formation were partly attributed to his foundation as a spiritual tattooist. Many spiritual tattoos were used in the formation, and he could easily construct many spiritual tattoos, which gave him an advantage that ordinary people couldn't reach in setting up and breaking formations. But the main reason was the gift from the 100 Formation Pagoda. At that time, Lu Yi's cultivation was only at the 8th Order Spirit Stream realm. After the Sealed World in Immortal Origin City, Lu Yi received a gift from the 100 Array Tower that far surpassed any other array cultivator in the past, raising his attainments in the Tao of Arrays to a level that was difficult for cultivators of the same level to reach. His foundation as a spiritual tattooist gave him a certain advantage when it came to setting up and breaking formations. The gift from the 100 Formation Pagoda was the foundation that raised his attainments in the Tao of Arrays. And for a long time after, this gift was still active, allowing Lu Yi's comprehension of the Tao of Arrays to increase day by day. Zhao Li of the Heaven Expanse sect had once told Lu Yi that those who could make it through the first 10 floors of the 100 Formation Pagoda could basically be considered a beginner in the Tao of Arrays. They could barely be considered a qualified array cultivator. If they could make it through the 20th floor, they would be proficient in the Tao of Arrays. If they could make it through the 33rd floor, they could be called a Grandmaster, an Array Grandmaster at the Spirit Stream realm. Just how exaggerated of an honor was that? Back in the mine at the outskirts of the Great Mang Mountains, the guy called Nen had tried to stop Lu Yi with a defensive array. In the end, It proved that the defensive array he thought was impregnable was nothing in front of Lu Yi. He never thought that the difference in their attainments in the Tao of arrays would be so great. A portion of the 100 Formation Pagoda was in the Mist Province's Heaven Expanse sect, while a second portion was on the Cloud River battlefield. Lu Yi had experienced the 100 Formation Pagoda before, and he had also obtained unimaginable benefits from it. As a result, after breaking through to the Cloud River realm and arriving on the Cloud River battlefield, he had planned to attempt the 100 Formation Pagoda one day. In the past, his cultivation was still low and he was not prepared, so it was difficult for him to do so. With his experience last time, Lu Yi knew that the greatest problem that formation cultivators faced in the 100 Formation Pagoda was the exhaustion of the power of the mind. Last time, he had relied on the soul-cleansing water to overcome the difficulties time and time again, so he would receive a great gift every time. He did not have a lot of soul-cleansing water on hand in the past, so he was not too bold to enter the 100 Formation Pagoda rashly. In the past few days, whenever he entered the Heavenly Secrets Treasury to search for resources, he would pay attention to whether there were any treasures or pills that could recover the power of the soul. But he had never found anything. After all, treasures or elixirs that could restore the power of the spiritual soul were of great use to warriors at the Spirit Sea realm. Even if they appeared in the Qinji treasury, they would be bought quickly. How could Lu Yi ever have a chance? This unintentional trip to the Immortal Essence City had given him a large amount of soul-cleansing water, and it was much more soul-cleansing water than the previous time. This resolved his greatest concern. Now that everything was ready, and Lu Yi was eager to improve his cultivation, the 100 Formation Pagoda was unavoidable. Every time he passed a level of the 100 Formation Pagoda, he would receive not only array Tao items, but the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the 100 Formation Pagoda was also extremely rich and pure. Last time, Lu Yi had opened dozens of apertures in the Sky Expanse sect. And that was the lowest level of the 100 Formation Pagoda. The 100 Formation Pagoda in the Cloud River battlefield should be even more effective. If nothing went wrong, his cultivation should be able to improve a little. He knew the location of the 100 Formation Pagoda. It was not close to the Heavenly Secrets Business Alliance. Even if he rushed there at full speed, it would take him more than 10 days. Moreover, there were probably many experts from the Myriad Devil Ridge monitoring his movements. Once he showed himself, he would definitely be hunted down. Lu Yi sighed inwardly. His peaceful days would not last long. He would have to start his life as a fugitive again. But before that, he still needed a large number of array flags. The difficulty of passing the 100 Formation Pagoda was the test of mental strength. Every level would put a huge burden on a cultivator's mind. If one's mental strength was not strong enough, it would be difficult to pass through too many levels in one go. The second difficulty was the use of array flags. After all, regardless of whether it was breaking or setting up arrays, array flags would be consumed. Lu Yi did not choose to refine them himself. Although it was more cost-effective, he had a lot of merit points now. It did not matter if he used some of them. He walked out of his room and queued up in the Heavenly Secrets Hall. His mind connected to the Heavenly Secrets Treasury and he bought a large number of array flags. Outside the Heavenly Secrets Business Alliance, there was a tea house that looked directly at the entrance of the Business Alliance. Both the owner and the waiters were delighted. The business of the tea house had always been lukewarm. Cultivators came and went in a hurry. Unless there was something to discuss or a reunion after a long separation, they would rarely patronize places like the tea house. Instead, they would go to places like restaurants. But recently, the business of the tea house had exploded. Every day, some cultivators would come in to drink tea. Moreover, they would occupy a table and sit there for many days. The tea house only had 2 floors. At this moment, both the upper and lower floors were full. In the beginning, the waiters of the tea house did not know what was going on. But as time passed, news gradually spread and they understood what these people were doing. Previously, the matter of 20 million Devil Ridge cultivators being poisoned to death in the mines outside Mount Taimong had caused a great uproar. The name of the instigator, Lu Yi of the Jade Blood Sect, had also spread widely in the Cloud River battlefield. Now, that crazy Lu Yi was hiding in the Heavenly Secrets Business Alliance. Many Devil Ridge cultivators who had heard the news from various channels had gathered here, wanting to get a share of the profits. Previously, a few Devil Ridge cultivators could not hold back and had broken into the Heavenly Secrets Business Alliance to kill Lu Yi. In the end, they had been killed on the spot by the people of the Heavenly Secrets Business Alliance. Not only that, but their sects had also been implicated. For the next 3 years, they would not be able to do any business with the Heavenly Secrets Business Alliance. Under this deterrence, no one dared to cause trouble in the Heavenly Secrets Business Alliance. Even if someone went in to investigate Lu Ye's whereabouts, they would pretend to be doing business. Whether Lu Ye was hiding in the Heavenly Secrets Business Alliance, no one knew. This was because from the beginning to the end, no one had really seen him walk in. It was just a suspicion. But according to the rumors, after the mine incident, a person wearing a mask had walked into the Business Alliance with a huge bag. That person's figure was exactly the same as Lu Ye's. Wearing a mask was undoubtedly because he did not want to reveal his true appearance. As for the huge bag, it was very likely that it was the spoils of war after killing 2,000 people with poison. Therefore, although it was just a suspicion, many Devil Ridge cultivators still concluded that Lu Ye was hiding here. Among them, Sacred Flame Sects Chu Yun and Zhou Pei were the most determined. The two of them were the first to arrive here. During this time, many Devil Ridge cultivators had lost their patience and left. However, the two of them had been sitting here for so many days, not moving at all. On the other side of the second floor of the tea house, there were two familiar figures. They were the lingering Xia Liang and Tan Sheng. When a large number of Devil Ridge cultivators had gathered outside the Huitian Valley, the two of them had miscalculated Lu Ye's response. They had thought that he would definitely escape back to the 9 states, so they had left early. In the end, the development of the situation was completely different from what they had imagined. When they received the news and rushed to the mine, they saw a scene of purgatory. More than 2,000 Devil Ridge cultivators' corpses lay across the ground, making their scalps tingle. They could not help but feel a lingering fear. Fortunately, the two of them had not arrived too early. Otherwise, they would have become one of the 2,000 people. Apart from these 4 people, most of the other cultivators were related to those who had been poisoned to death by Lu Ye. Some of them had childhood friends whose senior brothers had died tragically in Lu Ye's hands, and some of their junior sisters had died. How could they not take revenge for such a grudge? Driven by hatred, they gathered from all directions. To be continued. Chapter 665. There were many cultivators from the myriad Devil Ridge gathered in the tea house, and there was no lack of experts among them. However, not many of them were confident that they could kill Lu Ye. As long as Lu Ye hid in the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance, they would be helpless. Furthermore, the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance had the Heavenly Secret Pillar, which meant that Lu Ye could return to the 9 states at any time. It could be said that Lu Ye's current situation was countless times safer than when he was in Huitian Valley. Most of the cultivators from the myriad Devil Ridge gathered here because they were unwilling to give up. There were also some who were hoping for a fluke. What if Lu Ye ran out of the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance recklessly? He probably didn't know that there were so many pairs of eyes watching him from outside. After waiting for so many days, many people had already lost their patience. However, since they had already waited for so long, they might as well wait a few more days to see if there was any change in the situation. In another 10 days or half a month, more than 80% of the cultivators gathered here would disappear. After all, no one would keep watching until there was conclusive news. However, at noon on this day, things took a turn for the better. There were a lot of cultivators gathered in the tea house, so it had always been noisy. However, at a certain moment, the noise suddenly calmed down. It was as if someone had activated an invisible soundproof barrier, enveloping the entire tea house. At the window of the tea house, the cultivators from the myriad Devil Ridge looked in the direction of the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance in disbelief. They didn't know when a figure had appeared there. That person was wearing a mask and had suddenly appeared at the entrance of the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. Judging from his posture, he had just walked out of the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. In the 9 states, there were many cultivators who liked to wear masks, especially those ghost cultivators who acted sneakily. Therefore, a mask alone didn't mean anything. One's appearance could be covered by a mask, but one's figure couldn't be changed. What shocked the cultivators from the myriad Devil Ridge was that that person's figure was very similar to Lu Ye's. As if sensing their gazes, the person standing at the entrance of the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance looked up at the second floor of the tea house. When their gazes met, many cultivators from the myriad Devil Ridge looked nervous and excited. They were excited because this person was most likely Lu Ye and he was really hiding in the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance. He was nervous because the other party had already noticed the situation in the tea house and might not dare to come out. If he turned around and returned to the Qingji Business Alliance, no one could do anything to him. After a short moment of silent confrontation, the person suspected to be Lu Ye strode out of the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance's territory in front of everyone's eyes. The group of myriad Demons Ridge cultivators almost cheered in surprise. Under the mask, Lu Yi looked helpless. Previously, he had been warned by the steward of the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance that there were many myriad Devil Ridge cultivators monitoring his movements. However, he did not expect that after so many days, there would still be so many people. These guys were really patient. Of course, he had a safer and more reliable solution, which was to return to the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance and return to the 9 provinces. He would wait for a month before coming back. By then, no one would know where he was. However, if he wanted to, he would have made this choice in the Huitian Valley long ago. Why would he wait until today? Besides, so what if he came back a month later? Countless cultivators in the myriad Devil Ridge were watching him. No matter where he was, as long as he dared to appear in front of others, he would definitely attract a lot of trouble. Unless he was hiding in the 9 provinces' main sect. It was useless to hide his appearance. Therefore, when Lu Yi stepped out of the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance, he raised his hand and took off the mask on his face. In an instant, the many gazes that were looking at him from afar became much sharper. Previously they had only been guessing. Now that he had taken off the mask, Lu Ye's identity was confirmed. After taking a few steps, Lu Yi summoned his spirit boat and stepped on it. He activated his spirit power and the spirit boat soared into the sky, turning into a stream of light and flying in a certain direction. After him. Someone in the tea house shouted in a low voice. In the next instant, everyone took action and flew out of the windows. It wasn't just this tea house. Numerous figures suddenly appeared in the buildings around the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance, and flew up into the air. The tea house that was originally filled with guests was emptied out in an instant. This huge movement stunned some of the cultivators who didn't know what was going on. No one knew what was going on. In the sky, Lu Yi was in the lead, and behind him were at least 300 streams of multicolored light. At first glance, it looked like Lu Yi was leading a group of cultivators to do something, but in fact, the cultivators who were chasing after him were all itching to tear him to shreds. They thought that as long as Lu Yi dared to leave the Heavenly Secret Business Alliance, he would definitely die. However, after a while, many cultivators in the myriad Devil Ridge realized that something was wrong. How is this little brat so fast? Someone asked in surprise. He was an 8th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator. Although speed wasn't his forte, it was still above average. Logically speaking, it was impossible for Lu Yi, a 5th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator, to escape from his pursuit. But in fact, the distance between him and Lu Yi didn't show any signs of closing. In other words, in terms of flying speed, Lu Yi, a 5th Order cultivator, was almost the same as an 8th Order cultivator. The flying speed of a cultivator depended on the strength of their cultivation. Generally speaking, the higher the cultivation, the faster the flying speed. Therefore, it was very difficult for cultivators with low cultivation to survive in the hands of cultivators with high cultivation. If they couldn't win or escape, they could only die. Of course, there was also the factor of flying spirit artifacts. Different flying spirit artifacts were branded with different spirit arrays, which could bring different benefits to cultivators. Some expensive flying spirit artifacts could indeed allow cultivators to fly faster, but such flying spirit artifacts were all very expensive. The 8th Order cultivator quickly realized that flying spirit artifacts, which were valuable to other cultivators, were nothing to the famous dog Lu Yi. This guy didn't have much, but he had a lot of merit points. He could easily get 1 or 2 Heavenly Secret Pillars. It was normal for him to get a top flying spirit artifact from the Heavenly Secret Treasure House. In a moment of envy, jealousy, and hatred, the 8th Order cultivator became even more determined to kill Lu Yi. But at this moment he also understood that it wouldn't be his turn to kill Lu Yi. The 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivators were flying faster than him, and were constantly closing the distance between them. As long as they caught up, Lu Yi would die without a doubt. It was a pity, and he only hated himself for being an 8th Order cultivator instead of a 9th Order cultivator. Time passed by, and the 300 or so people who had chased out of Heavenly Secret City gradually widened the distance between them. Those with lower cultivations were at the back, while those at the front had higher cultivations. The dozen or so figures at the front were all 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivators. All of them were desperately pushing their flying spirit artifacts, and the spirit chi in their bodies surged endlessly. At this juncture, what they needed to do was not just to kill Lu Yi, but also to be one step faster than the others. After all, Lu Yi only had one head, and whoever made the first move had the highest chance of taking Lu Ye's life. At the front, Lu Yi stuffed a few spirit pills into his mouth and chewed slowly. Although he was being chased by a large group of myriad Demons Ridge cultivators, he didn't panic in the slightest. He even had the mood to assess his current strength. He dared to swagger out of the heavenly secret commerce union under the noses of so many myriad demons-ridge cultivators, not because he was hot-headed, but because he had a certain degree of confidence that he could resolve this crisis. Of course, he was alone, and it was impossible for him to be the opponent of so many enemies. Once they caught up to him, there was no way he could survive. But the premise was that they caught up to him. At this moment he was only driving his spirit ship, and after adding a wind travel spirit rune to it, he was basically on par with an ordinary 8th order cultivator. And this wasn't even his maximum speed. After some evaluation he felt that if he went all out, those 9th order cultivators might not be able to catch up to him. Being able to reach this level with a 5th order Cloud River Realm cultivation, the opportunity he obtained in Fox Immortal Valley played a huge role. The baptism bestowed upon him by Heaven's secrets had allowed his already powerful foundation to reach a new height. Furthermore, his cultivation had increased by a level. Not only did this give him the ability to kill enemies 3 levels higher than him, it also gave him an even faster flying speed. Of course, this didn't mean that he could sit back and relax while being chased by 9th order Cloud River Realm cultivators. What he lacked compared to 9th order cultivators was his own spirit chi reserves. No matter how strong his foundation was and how solid his foundation was, the difference of 4 minor realms made his spirit chi reserves inferior. Moreover, maintaining the wind travel spirit rune consumed a lot of spirit chi, so even though he had just started fleeing, Lu Yi was already prepared to replenish his spirit chi. Ordinary cultivators didn't have this convenience. After all, how much spirit pills could they refine while fleeing? Lu Yi, on the other hand, wasn't affected in this regard. In the past, he had never had the opportunity to seriously compete with 9th order Cloud River Realm cultivators in terms of flying speed. Now, after trying it out, Lu Yi was even more confident in himself. A resentful voice came from behind him. "Lu Yi, you can't escape. Die quickly." Lu Yi turned a deaf ear to this. To be honest, he had heard similar words many times in different situations, but the result was that he was still alive and well, while the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge who made things difficult for him didn't have a good ending. The last time he spoke to him like this was the cultivator from Abyss Rainbow Hall named Song Jure. Speeding over 100 kilometers, the distance between the 9th order cultivators and Lu Yi was getting closer and closer. It was already close enough for them to attack. At the same time, Lu Yi also clearly felt a sharp aura locking onto him from behind. Just as the Myriad Demons Ridge cultivators were about to attack, Lu Yi's figure suddenly fell at a speed so fast that it shocked them. This caused them to feel terrible, and they hurriedly dispersed the spirit chi they were secretly circulating. Immediately after, they saw Lu Yi turn around and fly past them, disappearing into the distance in the blink of an eye. He was actually flying back in the direction he came from. To be continued. Chapter 666. Behind the group of 9th order Cloud River Realm cultivators were the 8th order cultivators. Originally, they were about to give up the chase because according to the current situation, Lu Yi would die at the hands of those 9th order cultivators. It would be useless even if they chased after him. However, at this moment they actually saw Lu Yi lower his body, turn around and fly back. All of them were overjoyed at the unexpected good news. One by one they landed on the ground intending to intercept him. But before they could prepare, they saw Lu Yi put away his spirit boat and a pair of fiery red wings spread out from his back. His whole body turned into a red light and swept past them. The moment the wings appeared, Lu Yi's speed increased by a whole level. Everyone's expression changed. They hadn't expected that Lu Yi actually had such a method. Some people faintly realized something and couldn't help but look worriedly in the direction they had come from. They secretly exclaimed at Lu Yi's audacity and recklessness. The battle in the mine outside Grand Mang Mountain made Lu Yi understand a truth. Revenge had to be done early, preferably not overnight. Otherwise, if he missed it, even if he became stronger in the future, he might not have a chance to take revenge. After all, the Cloud River battlefield was so big that it was very difficult to find the whereabouts of a certain person. With his current strength, he was indeed not a match for 9th order cultivators. He would have a hard time fighting against 8th order cultivators, but killing those below the 8th order was basically not too difficult. The hundreds of cultivators who chased after him from Heaven's Fate City had uneven cultivations. After flying for 100 kilometers, the hundreds of cultivators formed a straight line, with those with lower cultivation being further back. Lu Yi had already passed through the 8th order and 9th order cultivators and was now facing those below the 8th order. Originally, these cultivators had almost lost sight of Lu Yi's figure, but driven by interest and hatred, they continued to pursue. Suddenly they saw a figure covered in flowing flames rushing towards them, and they couldn't help but be startled. Looking around, someone shouted in surprise, "It's Lu Yi." As the words fell, many cultivators summoned their spirit artifacts and secretly pushed their spirit chi, waiting for Lu Yi to arrive in front of them to teach him a lesson. In the next instant, the fiery red stream of light crashed into the group of myriad demons ridge cultivators with an indestructible aura. Violent spiritual energy surged endlessly at this moment, and the rumbling sound was endless, accompanied by screams and exclamations. In the blink of an eye, the red light Lu Yi had transformed into was like an arrow, piercing through the enemy's formation. Behind him, the sky was filled with a bloody mist as severed limbs and flesh flew everywhere. In that instant of contact, at least 7 or 8 people were killed. The remaining myriad demon ridge cultivators all looked horrified. None of them had expected Lu Yi, a mere 5th order, to be able to display such strength. It was true that more than 20 million demon ridge cultivators had died at his hands in the caves outside Grand Mang Mountains, including several 9th order Cloud River Realm cultivators, but they had all been poisoned to death by him, not because of his own strength. Only a few people knew Lu Ye's true strength. It was only at this moment that everyone realized that Lu Ye's own strength could not be underestimated. In the brief contact just now, none of the myriad demons ridge cultivators could block a single blow from him. The red light that had pierced through the enemy's formation changed direction again and rushed forward again, killing several myriad demons ridge cultivators who had yet to recover from their shock. "Lu Yi, how dare you!" Angry shouts rang out. The 8th and 9th order cultivators had caught up, and their eyes were about to pop out of their sockets. They never thought that under such circumstances, Lu Yi would actually have the guts to come back and kill more than a dozen people right under their noses. Although the people who had died were not related to them in any way, they still felt their faces burning. Lu Yi's actions were like a slap to their faces. Sensing that these powerful pursuers were approaching, Lu Yi did not stay any longer. After piercing through the enemy's formation for the second time, he immediately fled in a certain direction. Every time the fiery red wings on his back flapped, his figure would cross a large distance. The dozen or so 9th order cultivators who were chasing after him were shocked to find that Lu Yi's flying speed was not inferior to theirs. In fact, it was even faster. Originally, when they left Heaven Fate City, Lu Yi's speed was already exaggerated enough. With his 5th order cultivation, his speed was comparable to an ordinary 8th order cultivator. Everyone thought that it was because of his flight-type spirit artifact. But now, he had put away his flight-type spirit artifact and was relying on his own ability. Moreover, his speed was even faster than before. This was simply unreasonable. At this moment, the myriad demons ridge cultivators finally understood why Lu Yi had the guts to run out of Heaven Fate City. Obviously he had nothing to fear. "Everyone, that's a flying wing inscription." Someone suddenly said, "Lu Yi must have an extremely skilled inscription master behind him." The speaker obviously had a certain degree of understanding of spiritual tattoos. Although he knew that Lu Yi was also a spiritual tattooist, he didn't think that Lu Yi could construct a flying wing spiritual tattoo that could enable practitioners to fly stably. It was unreasonable. Even a warrior in the Divine Sea realm might not be able to construct and maintain the stability of spiritual tattoos while activating the power of spiritual tattoos to fly. It might be possible for a short period of time, but over time, mistakes would inevitably occur. Flying wing spirit inscriptions that required a long time to maintain were generally used in the Tao of inscription. The speaker continued, "He is using the power of the flying wing spirit inscription like this, which consumes a lot of his strength. With his 5th order cultivation he can only maintain it for half an hour at most. So, everyone, don't let him get rid of you. You must keep up with him. After half an hour he will definitely die." As soon as these words came out, the group of 9th order cultivators immediately perked up. Originally, there were still some people who were considering whether to use some secret technique to increase their speed, but after hearing these words they gave up on the idea. Anything that involved a secret technique of this level would cause a certain degree of backlash. Just like when Jianghu Ji had used a secret technique to escape outside returning Sky Valley, he had ended up weakening himself to the extreme. So, unless it was a last resort, no cultivator was willing to use a secret technique. It had to be said that this 9th order cultivator had a considerable understanding of the Tao of Spirit inscriptions, but he did not understand Lu Yi. If it were an ordinary 5th order cultivator, they would not be able to maintain their flying wing spirit inscription for too long. This was not a spirit inscription that a Cloud River Realm cultivator could master. But who would have thought that Lu Yi would have something like a talent tree? The flying wing spirit inscription was activated on the talent tree, so it consumed much less energy than a simple flying wing spirit inscription. Coupled with Lu Ye's strong foundation, he had been taking spirit pills to supplement his own consumption from the very beginning, so things were bound to go differently from what this cultivator had expected. As time passed, the distance between them gradually increased. Even if the group of Ninth Order cultivators desperately pushed their strength, after half an hour, they could only see a red dot in the distance. This kind of distance was very dangerous because if the distance increased any further, they would lose track of Lu Yi. If that happened, where would they go to find him? The Ninth Order cultivator who spoke earlier had a pale expression. Previously, he had vowed that with Lu Ye's cultivation, he would only be able to last half an hour at most. Now that the time limit was up, but looking at Lu Ye's posture in the distance, he was clearly full of vitality, not showing any signs of exhaustion. On the contrary, after half an hour of pushing their strength with all their strength, all of them had consumed a lot of energy. Although they were not in a state of exhaustion, they had reached a point where it would affect their strength. Seemingly aware of the faintly discernible gazes around him, the cultivator who spoke earlier gritted his teeth and said, "He won't be able to hold on for long. Fellow Taoists, victory is right in front of us, we must not give up. At the very least, we can't let him get away, otherwise everything will be over." Saying so, the spirit energy surging around his body fluctuated a few times in a very strange pattern, and immediately, his whole body became flushed red. His already extremely fast speed suddenly increased by a notch, and in an instant he pulled away from the others. Apparently, he had used some kind of secret technique to increase his speed. Seeing him so determined, the others followed suit and urged their secret techniques that they would not easily use. At their level of cultivation, they would basically cultivate some life-saving or desperate secret techniques. These secret techniques were either passed down from their sects or purchased from the Heaven's secret treasure house. In fact, Lu Yi had also cultivated some secret techniques. The Heart's Eye taught by Xiao Yang was a secret technique of the Wild Blade sect. The blood transmutation technique taught by Third Senior Brother was also a secret technique. However, the two secret techniques he had learned did not have much of a backlash, especially the Heart's Eye secret technique, which was just an extension and expansion of one's perception. The blood transmutation technique had some backlash, but as long as one paid a little attention, the impact would not be too great. The secret techniques these Ninth Order cultivators were using at this moment were different. All of them were used to increase their speed in a critical moment, so the backlash was obvious, and the longer it lasted, the greater the backlash would be. But at this moment, in order not to be left behind by Lu Yi, they did not care so much. Especially one of the sword cultivators, when the sword cry rang out, he suddenly overtook everyone else and took the lead. The gap that had been opened by Lu Yi was constantly closing. Lu Yi, who was fleeing in front, obviously felt it, but at this moment he was running at full speed. The Windwalk and Flight Wing spirit tattoos were constantly activated, so he could no longer increase his speed. Moreover, the consumption of spirit energy in his body was huge. Even if he had been taking spirit pills to replenish his spirit energy, the consumption of spirit energy for Lu Yi to maintain the state of 2 spirit tattoos was unimaginable. The spirit energy he replenished by refining spirit pills was simply not enough to make ends meet. Fortunately, he still had his spirit storage ring. The spirit energy stored in this spirit artifact ring was either infused by him on a daily basis or dissipated by himself, so he could use it at any time without any delay or hidden dangers. As they chased, the scenery on the ground quickly passed by. Lu Yi took out his 10-minute map and checked his position, looking for a suitable hiding place around him. He had to be prepared to be caught. If he really couldn't get rid of those guys behind him, he could only find some terrain he could use to hide. Genius Station Address. Mobile version reading address, M. Chapter 667. After a brief investigation, Lu Yi quickly turned and rushed off in a certain direction. There was a large river there that he might be able to use in a moment of crisis. The pursuers behind him were getting closer and closer, and the amount of spirit energy stored in his storage ring was dwindling. The situation was gradually becoming worse. The sound of surging water reached his ears. Lu Yi had arrived at the large river he had seen on the map. On the map, this large river was marked as the Pai River, stretching nearly 10,000 kilometers from east to west. The water was turbid and turbulent, and there were some powerful monster beasts living in it. Just as Lu Yi was considering whether to escape into the river, relying on this great river to conceal himself, the speed of his pursuers suddenly slowed down. Using this secret technique for a long time, these Ninth Order masters were also beginning to feel a little overwhelmed. How could there be a Fifth Order cultivator in this world who could run so fast? Even after going all out, they still couldn't catch up. In this situation, they were also riding a tiger and finding it difficult to dismount. They were unwilling to give up. They had been chasing for so long, and perhaps Lu Yi was about to reach the end of his life, but if they continued, who knew if they could catch up? Many pairs of eyes turned towards the Ninth Order master who had spoken before. This person's face was slightly pale at this moment. He had been the first to use his secret technique, so his consumption was also the greatest. At this moment, his aura was somewhat weak, and it was obvious he was about to collapse. However, this Ninth Order master still gritted his teeth. He must be about to die. Fellow Taoists, don't give up. If you miss this opportunity, there won't be a next time. The group of Ninth Order masters didn't know what to say. However, a person's strength was limited, and one of the Ninth Order masters suddenly came to a halt. Flying downwards. He couldn't hold on any longer, and if he continued chasing like this, regardless of whether Lu Yi died or not, this Ninth Order master was about to reach the end of his life. After using his secret technique and suffering a backlash, if he didn't quickly restore himself, it would likely leave behind some hidden dangers. Although this Ninth Order master also wanted to kill Lu Yi, compared with an uncertain outcome and his own future, he chose the latter. If there was a first, there would be a second. In just a stick of incense worth of time, 4 Ninth Order masters gave up one after another. Although the remaining people were still clenching their teeth and persevering, it was clear that they would not be able to hold on for much longer. However, they still clenched their teeth and continued to give chase. It was not that they were certain that they could catch up to Lu Yi, but when they were giving chase, they had already sent a message to the outside world. At this moment, some people were rushing over from nearby. What they needed to do now was to not let Lu Yi out of their sight. Once the reinforcements arrived, Lu Yi wouldn't be able to escape. In the pursuit, they were also constantly reporting Lu Yi's current location to the outside world. Lu Yi had also noticed this and had a bad feeling about it, but there was nothing he could do to stop them. Time passed, and after an incense stick's worth of time, Lu Yi suddenly turned his head in a certain direction, only to see several streams of light rushing towards him. Judging from the flying speed of these people, they were all 8th or 9th Order cultivators. This was undoubtedly the helper that the pursuing soldiers had called for. He hurriedly changed his direction and fled away from the person. However, he didn't go far before a few more streams of light entered his field of vision. There were also people rushing over from this direction. As expected, the people chasing him were all 9th Order cultivators with a wide network of contacts. They had all called for their friends and spread the news. Naturally, those who wanted to take his life would come to participate. Lu Yi could sense that he had probably entered an encirclement. No matter which direction he fled in, there would be myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators intercepting him. In the end, he still had to use the Pai River to escape. The turbulent and turbid river water could conceal his aura and movements very well. As long as he rushed into the Pai River, it would be difficult for the myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators to find him. But in this way, the myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators only needed to set up a blockade around the area where he fell into the water. It would be difficult for him to show himself unless he held his breath and fled far away. Yi's 9-spirit array could be used. If he held his breath for too long, he could enter the 9-spirit array diagram to take a breath. Presumably, the myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators would not expect him to have such a rare treasure. So for Lu Yi, although the situation was critical, it was not to the point where he was helpless. Moreover, he had consumed too much energy and could no longer escape like this. In the end, he still had to save some strength in case of an accident. Just as he made up his mind to rush into the Pai River, a violent spirit energy fluctuation suddenly came from a certain direction. Lu Yi hurriedly looked up. In that direction, a stream of light suddenly swept out from somewhere on the ground and crashed into the myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators' camp. Then a fierce battle broke out. This sudden turn of events shocked everyone. What was even more shocking was that the person who had suddenly appeared was extremely powerful. He brandished his long sword and sword chi swept out in all directions. In an extremely short period of time, he had killed those myriad Devil's Ridge cultivators until they were in a sorry state. No one knew who this person was because this person was wearing a white mask on his face, so they couldn't see his face clearly. However, from the other party's curvaceous figure, it was surprisingly a woman. Even the large sleeves and wide robes couldn't hide the other party's proud figure. Her graceful figure was vividly outlined by the robes as she moved around. The myriad demon ridge cultivators who fought against her were all shocked because the strength displayed by this woman far exceeded that of an ordinary Ninth Order Cloud River Realm cultivator. Originally, they had planned to surround Lu Yi with the others, but after being interrupted by this mysterious woman, they were suddenly at a loss as to what to do. Lu Yi didn't know who this woman was. Ever since he started cultivating, he had been hunted down many times. He had also received help from the cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance, but most of those had happened on the Spirit Stream battlefield. On the Cloud River battlefield, only the last time in the hunting ground did his fourth senior brother ask some of his friends to help him. So he did not expect that at this critical moment, someone would jump out to help him. But it was undeniable that this woman was very strong. After a brief hesitation, the fiery red wings on Lu Ye's back flapped as he gave up on the idea of escaping into the Pai River and flew straight in the woman's direction. He did not join the other party's battle and instead shouted as he flew past her, "Run!" No matter how strong this woman was, she was still alone. Since she had come to help him, Lu Yi had no reason to leave her behind. The woman obviously understood that the current situation was not suitable for her to be entangled with the enemy too much. After seeing Lu Yi rush out of the encirclement, she slashed down with a shocking sword wave, forcing the myriad demons ridge cultivators in front of her to retreat. She then turned around and chased after Lu Yi. She was strong enough and fast enough to catch up with Lu Yi in just a few breaths. Lu Yi secretly rejoiced that there was no such master among the myriad demons ridge cultivators who had been chasing him, otherwise, he would not have been able to escape for so long. But then again, this woman was a sword cultivator, and sword cultivators were known for their speed and killing. "Come with me," the woman said and led the way. Lu Yi followed closely behind. Behind him were many myriad demons ridge cultivators who had heard the news and rushed over. Along the way, Lu Yi and the mysterious woman did not communicate at all. However, Lu Yi was always about 300 feet away from her. The mysterious woman seemed to be here to help him, but before confirming her identity, Lu Yi did not dare to believe her rashly. Who knew if this woman was from the myriad demons ridge? If everything that had happened before was just a show, then he would be in a bad situation. However, the possibility of this was not high. If the mysterious woman really wanted to harm him, she could have done it now. Lu Yi was only suspicious of her hiding her head and showing her tail. Although he himself sometimes hid his head and showed his tail, however, he basically wore all kinds of facial masks, while the woman wore a simple white mask. As if sensing Lu Ye's vigilance, the mysterious woman did not say anything. She seemed to have a cold temperament and naturally had a temperament that did not allow strangers to approach her. Soon the two of them arrived in front of a rock wall. The rock wall was smooth and did not look special. However, Lu Yi saw something out of place at a glance. The formation. There were traces of someone setting up a formation here. Just as he was about to activate the spirit runes of insight, he saw a jade pendant appear in the mysterious woman's hand. She activated her spirit energy and gently shook it at the rock wall. A mystic light shot out, and an entrance quickly appeared on the rock wall that was as smooth as a mirror. The mysterious woman stepped in, but after taking a few steps, she turned back to look at Lu Yi. Because Lu Yi stood in place and did not move. As if sensing Lu Ye's scruples, the mysterious woman said, "If I wanted to kill you, you would have been dead long ago." Lu Yi did not comment on this statement. "They are catching up." As the mysterious woman spoke, her eyes under the mask looked past Lu Ye's figure and could clearly see streams of light flying over. In less than 20 breaths, those myriad demons ridge cultivators would catch up. Lu Yi shook his head and said, "I will remember fellow Taoist's great kindness in my heart. Farewell." Even if he was sure that the mysterious woman did not have any thoughts about him, Lu Yi was not willing to follow such a powerful person into a cave. That was equivalent to putting his life in the other party's hands. One could say that he did not appreciate her kindness or that he was stubborn, but there was nothing wrong with being careful. The mysterious woman's chest rose and fell visibly. She clearly did not expect Lu Yi to have such a reaction and was a little angry. However, at this moment she clearly did not have time to be entangled with Lu Yi. Seeing that Lu Yi was really about to leave, she hurriedly said, "Heaven's secret is my witness. I have no ill intentions towards you." Lu Yi was a little embarrassed. She came to save him, but he was suspicious of her. She even took the initiative to swear a heaven's secret oath. "Sorry." Lu Yi nodded slightly. The mysterious woman ignored him and turned to walk inside. Lu Yi hurriedly followed. Under the heaven's secret oath, no matter what the other party's purpose was, at the very least, she did not have any ill intentions towards him. This made Lu Yi have no worries. 7017K. Chapter 668. He followed the woman all the way into the depths of the mountain. After about 300 feet there was no way out. They should be in the belly of the mountain, so the space wasn't very spacious. Although the light was dim, it didn't affect Lu Ye's vision. After suddenly arriving at such a dangerous place, Lu Ye almost suspected that the mysterious woman had made a fake heavenly oath. He originally thought that by following her he would be able to enter a hidden place or find a place to hide, but now it seemed that wasn't the case at all. There were already fluctuations of spirit power behind him, and there were also sounds of conversation. It was obvious that the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators had already caught up, but before they could confirm whether there was an ambush, they didn't dare to rashly enter. However, they would definitely rush in. When that time came, Lu Ye would have no way out and his escape route would be blocked. He would undoubtedly die. Come here. The mysterious woman in front saw Lu Ye in a daze and raised her hand to beckon him. Although Lu Ye was suspicious, he still walked forward and stood not far from the woman. Come closer. The mysterious woman was a little impatient. Lu Ye's vigilant attitude made her feel very uncomfortable. In fact, this place wasn't very spacious, so Lu Ye couldn't get too close. Hearing her words, Lu Ye simply walked to her side and stood still. A delicate fragrance instantly lingered at the tip of his nose. All of a sudden, the mysterious woman's spiritual energy surged. As her spiritual energy surged, the mysterious runes beneath their feet glowed brightly, illuminating the dark space. Lu Ye stared at the complicated patterns under his feet in shock, then looked at the woman beside him in disbelief. However, the woman's face was covered by a mask, so Lu Ye couldn't see her expression at all. Before he could ask anything, the space shrouded in light began to distort, and in the next moment, the two figures suddenly disappeared. The commotion here alarmed the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who had rushed over. After probing a little and confirming that there were no hidden traps or formations, the cultivators who had chased here all rushed in. Soon, they reached the end of the 300-meter-long passageway. However, it was empty inside. There was not a single person in sight. Where did they go? Some people were puzzled. They had clearly seen Lu Ye and the mysterious woman walk in here, and there was no path ahead, so why did they disappear for no reason? How could two living people just disappear for no reason? Teleportation formation. Someone squatted down and looked at the remnants of the formation on the ground, revealing its mysteries. I've long heard that Lu Ye can set up teleportation formations. It seems like it's true. In such an environment where there was no way forward, it was impossible for two living people to disappear for no reason. However, if they borrowed the power of the teleportation formation, then it made sense. But what made people puzzled was, Lu Ye actually left a teleportation array here. When did he do it? Ever since he left Tianji City, he had been on the run. Obviously, it was impossible for him to have left it behind this time. Therefore, it could only have been left behind by him in the past. No matter when he did it, his cultivation is not high now. Even if he left a teleportation formation behind, the distance he can teleport to can't be too far. Right now, he must be within 300 miles. As a result, the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators who had rushed in quickly retreated, and news spread out. Many myriad Devil Ridge cultivators were mobilized to search for Lu Ye within a radius of 150 kilometers. At the same time, in another hidden place, Lu Ye's expression was complicated. Those myriad Devil Ridge cultivators thought that the teleportation formation in the belly of the mountain was left behind by him, but in reality, it was not. This was also the reason why Lu Ye had been so shocked. He had always thought that in the entire 9-states world, he was the only Cloud River tier cultivator who could set up something like a teleportation formation. Only today did he realize that he had been too arrogant. In the Cloud River tier, he was not the only one who could set up a teleportation formation. There were others. The 9-states world was vast, and there were many capable people in the world. It looked like he was still sitting in a well, looking at the sky as if it were the vastness of the well. Lu Ye did not feel the frustration of having his exclusive item shine in the hands of others. Instead, he was very excited. After relieving the discomfort caused by the teleportation formation, he hurriedly looked at the mysterious woman beside him. Fellow cultivator, that teleportation formation. I didn't set it up. The mysterious woman seemed to know what he wanted to ask, and she answered before he could finish his sentence. Then, I don't know who set it up either. You don't need to ask. Lu Ye choked. This was the first time he had met such a woman. Moreover, she did not know who set up the teleportation formation. What was she talking about? If she did not know, why would she bring him to that place and use the teleportation formation to escape? Lu Yi subconsciously felt that this mysterious woman did not want to tell him too much. This was very strange. She had come out of her own accord to save him, and she had even exposed an extremely hidden location. However, her attitude toward him could not be considered warm. What was she planning? Moreover, this mysterious woman gave Lu Yi a feeling of superiority. He could not help but feel that he was not facing a cultivator of the same generation as him. Instead, he felt as if he were facing a senior at the True Lake tier or even the Spirit Sea tier. Lu Yi suppressed some of the doubts in his heart and said, "Thank you for your help this time. May I ask for your name?" "I was only following orders." "You don't need to know my name," the mysterious woman said as she looked around. By the looks of it, it seemed that she had also come to this place for the first time. This caused Lu Yi to vaguely believe her words. However, the woman's words undoubtedly caused Lu Yi to be puzzled. Following orders? Whose order was it? Since she had saved him, she must have thought highly of him or wanted to be on good terms with him. Why did she have to hide it like this? Not only did she not report her name, but she also covered her face. This caused Lu Yi to be confused. Although he did not need to repay the kindness of saving his life with his body, Lu Yi at least wanted to know who this kindness came from. The woman had already turned and walked in a direction. This was a cave. It was dark but not humid. The space was also much more spacious than the belly of the mountain. In the quiet environment, although the sound of footsteps was light, it was still clear and audible. Lu Yi followed behind the woman. He had many questions to ask, but the other party's attitude was cold. Obviously, it was useless to ask. Not long after, the two of them arrived at the bottom of the cave. The mysterious woman stood still and looked at Lu Yi. "It's time for you to return to the 9 states. Now many people in the Myriad Devil Ridge are looking for you. Once you show yourself, you will be hunted down endlessly. So, returning to the 9 states is the safest." Lu Yi naturally did not want to return to the 9 regions. If he wanted to return, he would have done so long ago. The mysterious woman did not know his methods and thought that he had been hunted to a dead end. In fact, although the situation was dangerous, it was still under control. Moreover, at this place, even if he wanted to return to the 9 regions, he could not. But soon Lu Ye's expression froze. This was because not far in front of them, a pillar of heaven's secrets stood quietly. There was actually a Tianji pillar here. This was not the Tianji Business Alliance, nor was it a spiritual land. For a Tianji pillar to be hidden in such a secluded place, it was obviously used to deal with dangerous situations such as now. First, there was a teleportation formation, then there was a Tianji pillar. Lu Yi really wanted to know who was secretly helping him. The mysterious woman said that she was following orders. Who was the mastermind behind this? What was their purpose? The locations of the teleportation formations had been exposed. Now, the Tianji pillar was exposed in front of him. The other party had paid such a huge price but had no intention of revealing his identity. What exactly were they plotting? Why are you in a daze? The mysterious woman could not help but urge Lu Yi when she saw him standing there in a daze. No. What? I said I'm not going back to the 9 regions. A look of surprise flashed across the mysterious woman's eyes under the mask. She looked Lu Yi up and down and said patiently, "Maybe you don't understand your current situation, or maybe I didn't explain it clearly enough, but you only need to know one thing. If you continue to stay in the Cloud River battlefield, it will be very dangerous." "Of course I know." "If you know, then why aren't you leaving?" The woman could not help but curse in her heart. She completely lost her patience and said indifferently, "That's not up to you." Saying so, she raised her hand and grabbed at Lu Yi. Looking at her posture, it seemed that she wanted to tie Lu Yi up and bring him back to the 9 regions. When this woman fought the 8th and 9th Order Masters from Myriad Demon Ridge alone, Lu Yi knew that she was very strong, but to what extent, Lu Yi did not have a clear idea. Until now. When the small white hand reached out, Lu Yi had no time to react at all. A clanging sound rang out as a fiery red sword light slashed out. Lu Yi instinctively slashed out. This was purely the power of his heart's eye secret technique. Facing this slash, the woman did not dare to take it head-on. The long sword in her other hand suddenly popped out and blocked the attack. The sword and saber collided. A crisp sound rang out and sparks flew everywhere. Lu Ye's figure fluttered back as an awkward expression appeared on his face. "Sorry, my body's instincts." But then he thought about it and realized that something wasn't right. This woman had just sworn a heavenly secret oath, saying that she had no malice towards him, so why was she attacking him now? What's going on? "Don't hinder me from completing my mission." The mysterious woman's aura became colder and colder with the sword in her hand, I'll give you two choices. One is to obediently return to the 9 regions, and the other is for me to knock you out and bring you back to the 9 regions. Lu Yi stubbornly said, fellow Taoist, a forcibly picked melon is not sweet. What's wrong with this woman? Why does she want me to return to the 9 regions? She just saved me and now she wants to force me? However, the only thing Lu Yi could be sure of was that this woman had no malice towards him. After all, she had sworn a heaven's secret oath. If she had any malice, she would definitely be punished by heaven's secret oath. 7017K. Chapter 669. The mysterious woman couldn't care less about forcing things. Seeing that Lu Yi wasn't willing to comply, she snorted coldly and flicked her sword, sending a sky full of sword chi towards Lu Yi. Lu Yi's heart's eye secret technique was pushed to the extreme at this moment. The mountain ascending saber in his hand continuously slashed and slashed. The crisp sounds of sword and saber colliding rang out continuously. He was overwhelmed with shock. This woman's strength was a little too strong. He had killed an 8th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator before. Although he had Yi Yi's help at that time, even without her, he could still do the same with his own strength. It would just take a longer time and more methods. In other words, the current him was actually qualified to fight against a 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator. Even if he couldn't win, he could still hold on for a while. But in front of this mysterious woman, Lu Yi found that all his efforts were in vain. Faced with her storm-like attacks, it took less than 10 breaths for his defenses to crumble layer by layer. She was obviously not using her full strength. This woman was a sword cultivator. The strongest means of sword cultivators were flying swords, not close combat like this. The sharp sword chi shattered and Lu Yi froze in place. The sharp sword was pressed against his forehead. He could feel the cold touch and a faint wet feeling flowing down his forehead. He couldn't see the woman's expression under the mask, but Lu Yi could feel her cold aura. Return to the 9 states. The woman threatened. His skills were inferior, so there was nothing to say. If she really wanted to take his life, he would have died just now. If he continued to be stubborn, he might really be knocked out and brought back to the 9 states. It was better to obediently submit. At most, the trip to the 100 Formation Tower would be delayed by a month. But before Lu Yi could nod in agreement, the woman suddenly groaned. She couldn't even hold the sword in her hand steadily. Her aura became extremely chaotic at this moment. She hurriedly took a few steps back, distancing herself from Lu Yi, as if she was afraid of accidentally injuring him. What's wrong? Lu Yi frowned and asked. The mysterious woman didn't answer, but the next scene left Lu Yi dumbfounded. It was as if an invisible seal had been broken, and the woman's chaotic aura continued to rise. In the blink of an eye, she had broken through the level of a Cloud River tier cultivator. This scene was so familiar that Lu Yi couldn't help but recall the scene he encountered in the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance a few days ago. That day, when he was queuing up in the Heavenly Secret Merchant Alliance's Heavenly Secret Hall, he was ambushed by a few myriad Devil Ridge cultivators. In the end, a steward of the Heavenly Secret Merchant Alliance suddenly attacked and killed those people with lightning speed. The steward's situation at that time was exactly the same as the woman's. Someone who seemed to be in the Cloud River tier suddenly burst forth with the aura and strength of a true lake tier. This mysterious woman wasn't a cultivator at the Cloud River tier. Instead, she was at the Cloud River tier. You're from the Tianji Business Alliance? Lu Yi asked in surprise. As far as he knew, only the members of the Heavenly Mystery Business Alliance had such a bizarre ability. They were able to enter the battlefield of the Heavenly Mystery tier with a cultivation level that surpassed the Cloud River tier. Moreover, they were able to erupt with their true power in a short period of time. Return to the 9 regions. The woman warned Lu Yi through gritted teeth. Her voice was filled with difficulty, as if she was resisting something. After she finished speaking, the space around her suddenly distorted and she disappeared. If it weren't for the unique fragrance lingering at the tip of his nose, Lu Yi would most likely have thought that the experience just now was just an illusion. What's going on? Lu Yi was truly at a loss. Thinking back to everything that had happened since he met this mysterious woman, there was a sense of strangeness. She suddenly appeared and opened a gap in the encirclement for him, allowing him to escape. Immediately afterward, she led him to a hidden cave. There was still a teleportation formation left there. Through that teleportation formation they arrived here. There was also the Heavenly Secret Pillar that had been left behind long ago. Regardless of whether it was the teleportation formation or the Heavenly Secret Pillar, neither of them were methods that ordinary people could possess. The former required a powerful formation Dao attainment, while the latter required a huge amount of capital. The mysterious woman's attitude towards him was also neither warm nor cold. In fact, there were many times when she was impatient. This was somewhat contradictory to her actions of risking her life to save Lu Yi. However, she also said that she was only following orders. As for whose orders she was following, Lu Yi had no idea. Faintly, Lu Yi felt that he seemed to have touched upon something that he had never thought of before. The complexity of this matter far exceeded his imagination. It was not something that a fifth-order Cloud River Realm cultivator like him should be able to come into contact with. Looking at the place where the woman disappeared, Lu Yi frowned. It was only now that he suddenly realized a problem. That woman might not be from the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance. The Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance had never interfered in the struggles and grievances of cultivators. That was why they could maintain a transcendent status in the entire 9 regions. Perhaps the shadow of Heaven's secret was part of this. It was because of Heaven's secret that they were able to possess abilities that other cultivators did not possess. For example, entering the Cloud River battlefield with a cultivation that surpassed the Cloud River realm allowed them to display their true strength for a short period of time. If that woman was from the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance, she would not have come to save him. Otherwise, she would have broken the neutral position that the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance had always maintained and would be punished by Heaven's secret. Was there anyone in this world who was not from the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance who could use such means? Furthermore, from the clues that Lu Yi had obtained, there was an organization behind this woman. The teleportation array from before and the Heavenly Secret Pillar in front of him were all the handiwork of this organization. Only a certain organization could have such a strong foundation. What kind of mysterious organization was this? The woman wore a mask to conceal her appearance. Obviously, she was afraid of being recognized. If that was the case, she should be quite famous. Once her true appearance was exposed, it would be very easy for others to find out. Lu Yi was not sure how high her cultivation was. At the very least, she was at the True Lake realm. As for her final disappearance, most likely she had used some special method to suppress her own cultivation level and enter the battlefield of the Clouds River. However, this method had a time limit, or perhaps she could not use too much power. Otherwise, it would lose its effect. And once she possessed power that surpassed the Cloud River tier, she would be rejected by the battlefield of the Clouds River, and be sent out of the battlefield of the Clouds River. This was different from the situation of the manager of the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance. After that manager revealed the strength of the True Lake realm, he easily suppressed his cultivation to the Cloud River 9th Order. However, the mysterious woman could not. This was also the main reason why Lu Yi determined that she was not from the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance. In this cultivation world, there seemed to be many things that low-level cultivators could not come into contact with, or even dare to imagine. Everyone said that only Cloud River realm cultivators could enter the Cloud River battlefield. No other cultivators could enter. However, in less than half a month, Lu Yi had already seen 2 cultivators that surpassed the Cloud River realm. No wonder he had always felt that the mysterious woman was ridiculously strong. It turned out that her foundation was far beyond the Cloud River realm. However, the other party had undoubtedly taken some risks by coming to save him. No matter how strong her foundation was, in the end she could only use the techniques of the Cloud River tier on this battlefield of the Cloud River tier. If she was really surrounded and attacked by many people, she would also be in danger. Moreover, this time she had also exposed a hidden location and the teleportation array there. No matter what organization was behind the woman, they would suffer losses this time. Although Lu Yi did not want to speculate about others from a malicious angle, the other party's sneaky actions were still a little alarming. Regardless of the nature of the organization behind the mysterious woman, and what purpose they had, since they had saved him, they should have some ulterior motive. Perhaps they had taken a liking to his potential. Thinking about it, this was not strange. In the cultivation world of the 9 states, there were geniuses in every generation. However, it was rare to see someone like Lu Yi who had turned the Spirit Stream battlefield upside down with his own strength, and caused such a huge commotion in the Cloud River battlefield. He had already displayed his talent, so the organization would definitely take note of him. This time, perhaps they had saved him to do him a favor, so they did not reveal anything to him. Thinking of this, Lu Yi immediately understood that he would definitely have a chance to interact with people from this organization in the future. He decided to ignore the many doubts in his heart. As the saying went, when the cart reached the mountain there would be a way out. His cultivation level was still low, so even if he knew the other party's background, it would not be of any use. When his cultivation level was higher in the future, it would not be too late to think of a way to find out more. The danger before him had passed. The mysterious woman wanted to force Lu Yi back to the 9 states, but didn't the heavens do as she wished? Lu Yi did not return to the 9 states, and the other party was expelled from the Cloud River battlefield. Now no one dared to force him anymore. The location he was in should be very safe. After he relaxed his mind, the accumulated fatigue from before surged up, and Lu Yi suddenly felt exhausted. The main reason was that he had used up too much of his spiritual power. Maintaining the wings and flight patterns for a long time was indeed a bit too much for him. Quickly recovering was more important. Sitting down cross-legged, Lu Yi took out a spirit pill, stuffed it into his mouth and silently refined it. At the same time, in a certain sect in the 9 states, a graceful figure suddenly appeared in the sealed Tianji Hall. It was the mysterious woman who was still wearing a white mask. Thinking back to what had just happened, the woman under the mask frowned. She raised a hand and tapped on her battlefield imprint, sending out a message. Mission failed. The target has not returned to the 9 states. Although she didn't know what kind of choice Lu Yi would make after she left, just from his previous performance, the woman concluded that he would definitely not obediently return to the 9 regions. After a while, another message came. Where is he? At foothold number 35, the woman replied. After a long time, the other party sent another message. Let's leave it at that for now. Whether he lives or dies, it will depend on his luck. After a simple exchange, the woman walked out. As she walked, she took off the white mask on her face and put it away, revealing an outstanding beauty. The door of Tianji Hall was pushed open, and the woman's figure appeared. There was a group of people waiting outside. There were True Lake Stage cultivators, Cloud River Stage cultivators, and Spirit Stream Stage cultivators. They all bowed and said, "Greetings, Sect Master." The woman only nodded slightly, then rushed into the sky. Many young disciples looked at her leaving figure, unable to regain their senses for a long time. 7017K. Chapter 670. In the hidden cave, Lu Yi refined the spirit pill's medicinal efficacies to restore his body while he checked his current location. After a while, he furrowed his brow. There was something wrong with his current location. He was picked up by the mysterious woman near the Pai River. Then the two of them flew as fast as lightning and entered a hidden cave. With the help of a transmission array, they were transported here. He remembered his previous location very clearly. What made him feel that something was wrong was the distance. The previous location was more than 1,500 kilometers away from here. Even if he counted the distance he and the mysterious woman flew across, the remaining distance was more than 1,000 kilometers. In other words, the previous transmission array was more than 1,000 kilometers away from here. He was greatly shocked. He could also set up teleportation arrays himself. In the beginning, the teleportation arrays he set up could only teleport a limited distance. However, as his attainments in array Dao gradually increased, and his cultivation level gradually increased, the teleportation arrays he set up could teleport a greater distance. He was now a 5th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator, and the transmission arrays he set up had a range of about 300 kilometers. He had made some calculations before. Even if he reached the 9th-order Cloud River Realm in the future, the transmission arrays he set up would not exceed 600 kilometers. Any further and the transmission arrays would not be able to respond to each other. But the transmission arrays left behind by the mysterious organization in the Cloud River battlefield could actually cover a distance of 1,000 kilometers. This undoubtedly meant that the person who set up the transmission arrays had a much higher attainment in the Tao of arrays than he did. After pondering for a while, Lu Yi came to a realization. Naturally, an ordinary Cloud River Realm cultivator would not have such an ability. But since the organization could let the mysterious woman, a cultivator above the Cloud River Realm, enter the Cloud River battlefield, they could naturally let others enter. For example, a true Lake Realm array cultivator or even a Spirit Sea Realm array cultivator. If such a powerful array cultivator set up a transmission array, it would not be surprising that it could cover a distance of 1,000 kilometers. This organization should have left these hidden places in the Cloud River battlefield for emergency purposes. Although Lu Yi had only come into contact with 2 of them, it was obvious that there were more than 2 such hidden strongholds. It seemed that the scale of this mysterious organization was much larger than previously thought. Lu Yi could not be bothered to find out the purpose of this mysterious organization. The transmission arrays they set up piqued his interest. In this way he wouldn't have to worry about his own situation. Those people from the Myriad Devil Ridge should be able to guess that he had used the teleportation array to escape. However, according to their knowledge, the teleportation array he had set up could only span 300 to 400 miles. Therefore, they should have used the location where he had disappeared as the center to search for him within 300 to 400 miles. Who would have thought that he was thousands of miles away? This was undoubtedly good news for Lu Yi. A moment later, Lu Yi returned to the place where he had first appeared. He found the teleportation portal and poured his spiritual energy into it to examine it carefully. Regardless of who created this formation, since it was left behind for the cultivators of the same organization to use in an emergency, there shouldn't be too many restrictions when activating it. To put it simply, it could be activated by anyone who injected spiritual energy into it. This made it easier for Lu Yi to pry into the mysteries of this array formation. After studying it for a while, Lu Yi soon found that there were some subtle differences between this array and the teleportation array he had set up. Even the void spirit pattern at the core was somewhat different from what he had learned in the book. In fact, it wasn't just the void spirit pattern. He had learned many spirit patterns from books, such as Sharpness and Defense, which were all in Madame Yun's book collection. However, there were some differences between them and the spirit patterns on the talent tree. Spirit patterns weren't unchanging. The subtle changes in yin and yang would often affect the overall effect of a spirit pattern. Therefore, there were often several construction methods for the same spirit pattern, and the power that could be exerted was also different. However, Lu Yi had done research before. No matter what the construction of the spirit patterns recorded in the book looked like, the spirit patterns on the talent tree displayed the greatest power and were the most convenient to construct. The spirit patterns on the talent tree seemed to condense all the essence of each spirit pattern together and use the most reasonable construction method to exert the strongest power. Moreover, Lu Yi didn't need to spend much effort to execute it. With a thought, the spirit patterns would naturally be successfully constructed, reaching a level where they could be activated at will. The void spirit pattern on the teleportation array in front of him gave Lu Yi a lot of gains, but more gains were in the method of setting up the teleportation array. The other party's attainments in the array Dao were much higher than Lu Yi's. This kind of opportunity to directly study a formation cultivator setting up a formation was rare, and he could often learn a lot from it. While Lu Yi was engrossed in studying the teleportation array, the cultivators from the Myriad Demon's Ridge outside had already dug 3 feet into the ground. However, they had already searched the area within a radius of several hundred li. Yet there was still no trace of Lu Yi. Seeing that made them both furious and helpless. Many people dispersed, but there were still many who didn't give up and continued to search for Lu Yi's whereabouts. At the same time, a large amount of news spread out. It could be said that in the current Cloud River battlefield, as long as there were Myriad Devil Ridge cultivators, there would be people paying attention to Lu Yi's traces. In principle, as long as Lu Yi dared to appear, even if he wore a mask, it would be useless. However, under such an atmosphere, there was still no news of Lu Yi. It was as if he had already left the Cloud River battlefield. Time flew by, and 3 days later. In the cave where he was hiding, Lu Yi let out a long breath and a thoughtful look flashed in his eyes. 3 days was enough for him to completely recover. He even replenished the spirit power in his spirit storage ring. During this time he had been studying the teleportation array here. He had gained a lot. Not to mention other things, if he were to arrange a teleportation array at this moment, the teleportation distance should be increased by a few dozen kilometers. A few dozen kilometers should not be underestimated. For a Cloud River cultivator, a few dozen kilometers was indeed nothing. If they flew at full speed, they could cross it in the time it took to brew a cup of tea. However, such a breakthrough in the teleportation array undoubtedly meant that Lu Yi's attainments in spirit arrays had improved. Moreover, he was currently at the 5th order Cloud River realm. In the future, his cultivation would improve. If he could gain something from this trip to the 100 array tower, his attainments in spirit arrays would also improve greatly. At that time, the teleportation array he arranged would be even more powerful. The only flaw was the experience. The experience of the teleportation array and the teleportation of the Heaven's Fate Pillar were two different things. The latter was silent, and the teleportation was completed before the cultivators could react. It was extremely stable and comfortable. However, the experience of the teleportation array was not so wonderful. When Lu Yi first arranged the teleportation array, he felt like he was stepping on air and falling into a bottomless abyss. After the teleportation was completed, he would feel dizzy. He originally thought that it was because his skills were not good enough, but after experiencing the teleportation array set up by others, he realized that it was not his skills that were not good enough, but the teleportation array was just like that. The further the teleportation distance, the worse the experience seemed to be. This allowed Lu Yi to regain some confidence. His spirit chi had fully recovered, and his research on the teleportation array was almost complete. It was time to set off again. Lu Yi woke up Hu Pe, who was sleeping at the side, and walked out through the passage. During the 3 days he stayed here, Yi had already found the way out. The way was not hidden. Not long after, he arrived in front of a rock wall. The rock wall was blocked and there was no way out. However, this was just a facade. The rock wall was just a man-made barrier. Lu Yi raised his hand and punched, and the rock wall immediately shattered. A dazzling light shone in, and Lu Yi could not help but squint. After gradually getting used to the light outside, Lu Yi took out his spirit boat, stepped onto it, and flew up. He did not put Hoopa back into his spirit beast pouch. It had never liked staying in the spirit beast pouch. According to Yi, it was pitch black inside and there was no sound at all. It was like a small space that was completely sealed off. That was the reason why Lu Yi did not put Hoopa in the spirit beast pouch in the past, and only did so when he needed to hide his whereabouts. Now that his figure was memorized by many cultivators of Myriad Demon's Ridge, it would not be effective even if he wore a mask. As such, he might as well not use any useless disguises. The distance to the 100 Formation Pagoda was not close. However, as long as he was careful enough, there should not be any problems. Along the way, Lu Yi tried his best to hide during the day and travel at night. He also maintained a height of around 400 feet above the ground. At such a distance, it was easy for him to land and hide at any time, avoiding the possibility of being discovered. Of course, there were drawbacks to this height as well. If someone were to ambush him on the ground, it would be difficult to avoid. However, there were always trade-offs. Lu Yi could choose to fly at a height of 2,000 to 3,000 feet, but that would make it difficult for him to hide if he met someone. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. The journey was calm and there were no twists and turns. Under the premise that Lu Yi deliberately avoided cultivators, he did not even see a single cultivator from Grand Heaven Alliance, let alone Myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators. Suddenly, a message came from the battlefield imprint. Lu Yi checked and found that it was a message from 4th Senior Brother. Since Lu Yi left Huitian Valley, Li Baxian often sent messages to ask about his recent situation. Lu Yi would also occasionally tell him that he was safe. Although the two of them were not in the same place, their relationship did not change because of this. After a few simple exchanges, everything in Huitian Valley was as usual. Although some Myriad Demon's Ridge cultivators would occasionally appear nearby, they never dared to disturb them. Firstly, Huitian Valley was now guarded by the wolf pack and there were many formations left by Lu Yi. It was useless for the Myriad Demon's Ridge to go there. If they launched a large-scale attack, Li Baxian and the others could escape back to the 9 provinces at any time because of the Qingji pillar that Lu Yi left in the spiritual land. Secondly, when Lu Yi left Huitian Valley, he said that if anyone dared to break into his spiritual land, he would immediately kill his way into the spiritual stream battlefield and destroy their sect's encampment. No matter how unwilling the Myriad Demon's Ridge was, they did not dare to rashly attack Huitian Valley before Lu Yi died. Otherwise, they would only bring disaster to their own sections. It was not the first time that the sect destroying Yi had destroyed other sects' encampment on the spiritual stream battlefield. Who would not be afraid? To be continued. Chapter 671. After a simple conversation, Li Baxian learnt about Lu Ye's plan. His junior brother was skilled in formations, so it was only natural for him to go to the 100 Formation Tower to study. It was possible to say that all formation cultivators in the 9 provinces would do everything they could to visit the 100 Formation Tower when they reached the Cloud River realm. In particular, formation cultivators from the Myriad Demon Ridge would do so. The first section of the 100 Formation Tower was in the Mist Province's Heaven Expanse sect. It was the sect's treasure, so they could not enter it. However, the section in the Cloud River battlefield did not belong to anyone. Li Baxian did not say much after learning about Lu Ye's plan. He only warned him to be careful. After ending the conversation, Lu Yi continued on his way. Around half a day later, as Lu Yi flew on his artifact, he suddenly received another message from the battlefield imprint. He checked it in a hurry and discovered that it was actually his 4th senior brother who had contacted him. This was quite rare. His 4th senior brother would not disturb him so frequently. Junior brother, I've asked around about the 100 Formation Tower. The situation there is rather complicated, so I'll tell you about it. Afterwards, he received large chunks of information. Through the information, Lu Yi felt warmth in his heart. He could sense his 4th senior brother's concern. Actually, he already knew about all the information Li Baxian had sent him. He had been in the Cloud River battlefield for so long. Although he had never set off for the 100 Formation Tower, he still paid attention to the situation there. This was because there would be a day when he set off for the 100 Formation Tower. There was nothing wrong with making preparations beforehand. Just like his fourth senior brother had said, the situation there was rather complicated. If he barged in recklessly without knowing anything, it was very likely for him to suffer. Especially when he was at the Tianji Merchant Union a few days ago, he had specially bought a set of information on the 100 Formation Pagoda from the Tianji Merchant Union. It was undoubtedly much more detailed than what Li Baxin had scouted out on the spot. The information even included the experiences of many array cultivators who had challenged the 100 Formation Pagoda. For this, Lu Yi had spent a large amount of spiritual stones. Of course, someone as wealthy as him would not care about mere spiritual stones. They were all spoils of battle anyway. But he didn't expose him. After Li Baxin told him all the information he knew, he warned, "With your ability, you'll definitely be able to obtain a lot of benefits in the 100 Formation Pagoda. But you must not be greedy and advance rashly. Your cultivation is still low, so even if you encounter any setbacks, it won't be too late to explore in the future when your cultivation is higher." "I understand. Don't worry, fourth senior brother," Lu Yi replied. A short while later, Lu Yi ended his communication with Li Baxin and continued on his way. On the spirit boat, Yi, who was sitting in front of Lu Yi, seemed to have sensed something. She glanced back and smiled. "Is fourth senior brother looking for you?" Although Lu Yi had exchanged imprint brands with many cultivators, it was rare for him to communicate with someone for such a long time. Lu Yi nodded. "Yes, he asked me about the 100 Formation Pagoda." Yi understood. "Fourth senior brother must be very worried about you." How could Lu Yi not know this? Of course, he chose to leave Hudian Valley and lure away the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators by himself. He was afraid that Li Baxin would have the misconception that they had implicated him. But in reality that was not the case. He had already been targeted. Even if he temporarily escaped back to the 9 prefectures and ensured his safety, what was the point? Unless he could hide in the 9 prefectures' main sect and not enter the Cloud River battlefield. To him this was actually a choice. After all, he could rely on consuming elixirs to cultivate. If he stayed in the main sect, his cultivation speed would not be fast, but it would not be too slow either. He would still have an average standard. However, Lu Yi could not stand it. He cultivated in his own spiritual land peacefully and did not provoke or harm anyone. Yet, the myriad Devil Ridge people came to his door time and time again. So he could only fight back. Protecting the spiritual land so that Li Baxin giant armor and the others could have a stable cultivation environment was just a convenient thing to do. It was not the main reason. Reality proved that a horse could not grow fat without weeds. It was because of his decision to leave Hudian Valley that he had the shocking battle record of killing 20 million myriad Devil Ridge cultivators by poisoning them in the mine. That was why he could obtain so many spoils of war and subsequently change the breath fruit core. Because of this, he entered Immortal Essence City and brought out a large amount of soul water. This filled him with confidence for the trip to the 100 Array Tower. Staying in the main sect of the 9 prefectures was safe, but how could there be so many opportunities and benefits? Although fighting a battle of wits and courage with the myriad Devil Ridge cultivators was tiring and dangerous, the benefits were obvious. So, Lu Yi, you have to become stronger quickly. Don't let those who care about you worry too much. Lu Yi smiled. Soon. Now he could already kill 8th Order cultivators. If his cultivation could improve, he could even kill 9th Order cultivators. At that time, even though the Cloud River battlefield was huge, there would not be many who could truly pose a threat to his life. A few days passed in the blink of an eye. When a well-ordered city appeared in his field of vision, Lu Yi knew that he had arrived at his destination. 100 Array City. In the entire Cloud River battlefield, there were very few cities with their own names. In the Cloud River battlefield, most cities were named after Heaven's Fate City and had different numbers to distinguish them. However, there were also some special cities that had their own names. The name 100 Array City was obviously derived from the 100 Array Pagoda. The distance between the two places was only a mere 15 kilometers. To a cultivator of the Cloud River tier, this distance was nothing. Many formation cultivators lived in the 100 Formation City all year round, and would occasionally head to the 100 Formation Pagoda to cultivate Formation Dao. In the beginning there was no city here. However, because of the 100 Array Pagoda, many cultivators would gather here from all over the Cloud River battlefield. Although Array cultivators were not a particularly big sect, compared to the smaller sects like Beast Tamer and Yenshur, it was still quite big. No matter what, Every sect would have some array cultivators who were responsible for setting up and maintaining spirit arrays. There were also many rogue cultivators who did not belong to any sect, and there was no lack of them who cultivated array Dao. As a result, there were actually many array cultivators in the 9 prefectures. With so many array cultivators gathering at the 100 array pagoda, it naturally brought a lot of people to this place. No matter where it was, as long as there was a gathering of people, it would slowly grow and 100 array city was born. When the scale of this place grew to a certain extent, even the Heaven's Fate Commerce Alliance moved in. It could be said that 100 array city was a city whose purpose was to serve array cultivators. 80% of everything in the city was related to array Dao. There was a reason why the 100 array pagoda was located 30 kilometers away from 100 array city and not in the city itself. Many array cultivators would stay outside the 100 array pagoda for long periods of time to exchange pointers with fellow array cultivators. Or when someone challenged the pagoda, they would trigger the pagoda's resonance and gain some enlightenment and benefits. Therefore, it was not suitable to be too lively near the 100 array pagoda. As a result, 100 array city was naturally not formed around the 100 array pagoda. Those array cultivators would not agree to such a thing. Lu Ye's goal was not 100 array city, so he naturally did not need to enter the city. However, if he wanted to enter the 100 array pagoda, he had to follow some rules. As for who set these rules, it was impossible to verify because these were rules passed down from generation to generation of array cultivators. Of course, if one was truly capable, they could ignore these rules. However, this would ultimately make things very troublesome. Therefore, when he saw 100 array city, Lu Ye's gaze passed over the city and looked at a broken pagoda 30 kilometers away. He had once been to the Sky Expanse sect and seen the first section of the 100 array pagoda. Looking at it now, the second section seemed to fit perfectly with the first section. If someone could bring this section out of the Cloud River battlefield and place it in the Sky Expanse sect, it would definitely restore 60 to 70% of the 100 array pagoda's glory. Unfortunately, no one had been able to do so since ancient times. The second section of the 100 array pagoda was the middle section. It had no base at the bottom and no roof at the top. At first glance, it looked neither fish nor fowl. However, there were obvious traces left behind by the erosion of time. The entire pagoda was simple and unadorned. Lu Yi flew over on his weapon and landed 10 kilometers away from 100 array city. Looking around, there was nothing but a few crooked trees. The intertwining branches of the trees vaguely formed an arched space. If one stood in front of the arched space and looked straight ahead, they would be able to clearly see the 100 array pagoda. The arched space formed by the intertwining branches was like a door to the 100 array pagoda. In fact, that was indeed the case. One could safely reach the 100 array pagoda by passing through the branches and walking straight ahead. If one were to deviate from the path, it would not be a pleasant experience. Because with the 100 array pagoda as the center, there was no place within a 30-kilometer radius that was absolutely safe. Those places were filled with all sorts of formations left behind by cultivators from different eras. Those seemingly inconspicuous places might contain hidden dangers. Since ancient times, generations of formation cultivators had refined their formations here. Almost every one of them had more or less gained something. Sometimes they would spar with others, and the sparring between formation cultivators was nothing more than setting up and breaking formations. Many formations had been left behind in this manner. Some people might have other intentions and deliberately set up formations in certain places, leaving behind difficult problems to test the formation cultivators who came later. Therefore, after generations of inheritance, there were countless hidden formations within a 30-kilometer radius of the 100 array pagoda. One might even trigger a formation after taking a few steps. This was also the reason why Lu Yi was willing to follow the rules. Of course, he could fly directly to the 100 array pagoda from any direction, but who knew if he would encounter a flight restriction formation? Once he encountered one, he would definitely fall. At that time, if he wanted to advance, he would have to break through the formations one by one. It was not as if such a thing had never happened before. There was once an arrogant formation cultivator who did not take the normal path and ended up trapped outside the 100 array pagoda. In the end, not even his bones could be found. In the Cloud River tier, Lu Yi believed that there was probably no one who could surpass him in terms of formations. However, formations were not something that could be looked down on just because one had a high level of attainment in formations. Some formations had existed for a very long time and accumulated spiritual power over the years. Even if it was a very ordinary formation, once triggered, it would erupt with terrifying power. To be continued. Chapter 672. Within a 30-kilometer radius of the 100 Formation Pagoda, there were many hidden formations and dangers. There was only one path that was absolutely safe, and that was to pass through the arched space formed by the branches of several crooked trees. Only then could one safely reach the 100 Formation Pagoda. When entering it was this path, but when leaving it was another path. When Lu Ye's figure landed, there were two people preparing to enter. The slight movement caused them to glance at Lu Yi, but they didn't pay too much attention to him. At that moment, Lu Yi put his mask back on and put the amber back into his spirit beast pouch. Although this kind of concealment wasn't very useful, it was still better than nothing. The two people had already passed through the arched space. As they walked, they could hear the sound of their conversation. The two were clearly formation cultivators. At that moment they were discussing how to set up a formation. They each had their own opinions and both felt that their method was more effective. Their debate was very intense. Although Lu Yi cultivated the Tao of formations, after such a long time, he didn't have any similar experience apart from the time he exchanged pointers with the Heaven Expanse Sex Zhaoli at the Spirit Stream battlefield. He strolled behind the two and listened to their conversation. For a moment he felt that it was rather interesting. However, the two clearly weren't very skilled in the Tao of formations. From Lu Ye's point of view, their debate was like an adult watching a child quarrel. He suddenly realized that in the Tao of formations, he was already far ahead of other cultivators of the same level. After walking for several kilometers, one of the shorter formation cultivators suddenly fell silent and revealed a pensive expression. When his companion saw this, he struck while the iron was hot and said, "It seems fellow Taoist Qi has realized something. In the end, my method of setting up formations is more effective, right?" His companion's silence caused him to misunderstand. For a moment, he was immensely pleased with himself, thinking that his companion agreed with him. The cultivator surnamed Qi didn't say anything. Instead he turned around and glanced at Lu Yi. Then he whispered to the cultivator surnamed Yu, "Fellow Taoist Yu, did you notice that person just now?" "What?" The cultivator surnamed Yu didn't understand. "The person behind us. Don't look back." "What about him?" The cultivator surnamed Yu's mysterious behavior made him nervous. "Think about it carefully, doesn't he look like a person?" The cultivator surnamed Yu reminded. He had been preoccupied with discussing array formations with the cultivator surnamed Qi, so even when he saw Lu Yi at the entrance, he didn't pay much attention. But as he walked, he suddenly realized that this was the reason he was silent, and not because he had been convinced by the cultivator surnamed Qi. The cultivator surnamed Qi carefully thought back. However, he had only glanced at Lu Yi and hadn't paid any attention to him. How could he possibly think of anything at this moment? He whispered, "Fellow Taoist Yu, don't keep me in suspense. Who is that person?" The cultivator surnamed Yu said softly, "If I'm not wrong, he should be Lu Yi." Cultivator Qi's expression suddenly changed. Even a cultivator like him who was obsessed with array Tao, had recently heard of Jade Blood Sect's Lu Yi's name. He also knew that many cultivators from Myriad Devil Ridge were tracking Lu Yi's whereabouts, but there seemed to be no practical gains. If the person behind him was really Lu Yi, then things would be interesting. "Fellow Taoist Qi, are you sure?" The cultivator surnamed Qi said, "He's wearing a mask and doesn't show his true appearance, but his figure is very similar to the rumors. There are many people with similar figures in this world. Rumor has it that Lu Yi is proficient in array Tao." The cultivator surnamed Qi added. The cultivator surnamed Yu's eyes lit up. "Yes, that's why he came to the 100 Array Pagoda. Even if we're wrong, it doesn't matter too much. At worst we'll just apologize. But if he really is Lu Yi, then fellow Taoist Yu will get rich today." Lu Yi was only a 5th order cultivator, while the two of them were 7th order and 6th order cultivators. If they worked together, how could they let him escape? As their eyes met, the two of them understood each other's intentions. The cultivator surnamed Qi suddenly stopped and pointed to the empty space next to him. "Fellow Taoist Yu, there is a killing formation here. I wonder if fellow Taoist is able to see anything from it?" He wasn't too sure whether there was a killing array here or not, so he just mentioned it casually. The cultivator surnamed Yu understood tacitly. He also stopped and looked in that direction, saying, "Let me see." A few dozen meters behind the two, Lu Yi walked unhurriedly and sighed in his heart. He knew that even if he wore a mask, it wouldn't be of much use. Looking at the situation, his whereabouts had been exposed again. The two cultivators were still pointing at an empty space when Lu Yi walked past them. At that moment the two cultivators stopped talking. A long halberd suddenly appeared in one of their hands. Surging with spirit energy, the halberd pierced straight at Lu Ye's back. The full power of a 7th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator was unleashed. The other cultivator seemed to be a spirit cultivator. A golden light blossomed in his hand and suddenly elongated, turning into a golden arrow. The golden arrow trembled slightly and also pierced through the air. The 7th-order Cloud River Realm cultivator, Qi, didn't even have time to react to what had happened. He was stunned to see that Lu Yi was already less than a meter away from him. In his field of vision, he saw a fiery red saber slash at him. Then he felt his arm go numb and his severed arm fly into the air. Ah! A cry of alarm rang out. The cultivator surnamed Qi's face changed greatly and he staggered back. However, Lu Yi had already slashed out a second time. This time, the saber brushed past the body of the opponent's halberd and slashed at his neck. Immediately, he passed by the cultivator surnamed Qi's figure and rushed towards the cultivator surnamed Yu. At that moment, the cultivator surnamed Yu had just used his golden arrow technique. Seeing Lu Yi closing in on him like a ferocious tiger, the terrifying pressure he felt made it difficult for him to breathe. He immediately felt that something was wrong. Without even thinking, he moved his feet and directly floated back. Lu Ye's long saber slashed down, and the support of the Twin Peaks' sharp spirit inscriptions directly broke through the person's protective spiritual energy, leaving a huge wound on his chest. However, this person was also sent flying out of the safe passage under the powerful impact. It was as if he had broken through an invisible barrier. When the ripples spread out, the man's figure suddenly disappeared. Lu Yi stopped and hesitated for a moment, but he didn't pursue. The place where the cultivator had fallen was covered by a spirit array. He didn't know when or by which spirit array cultivator. Before knowing the details of this spirit array, rashly rushing in was not a wise move. The other party had taken a blow from him and had fallen into an inexplicable spirit array. Everything pointed to a disaster. Even if he had the strength to break the spirit array, he might not be able to find his way back. Lu Yi withdrew his saber. Only now did the corpse of the cultivator surnamed Qi fall to the ground. Blood flowed out and dyed the ground red. Lu Yi stepped forward and collected the cultivator's storage bag and spirit artifact. Then he kicked the corpse out of the safe passage. The moment the corpse fell to the ground, an explosion rang out. A huge heat wave, violent sound, and dazzling flames all indicated that an explosion array had been activated. Lu Yi was secretly shocked. Although he knew a lot about the outside of the 100 Formation Tower from the intelligence of the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance and knew that it wasn't safe outside the safe passage, he didn't expect the situation to be so serious. There were truly hidden array formations everywhere. The power of this explosion spirit design was much greater than the one he had set up. This didn't mean that the person who arranged this array had a higher level of attainment in the Tao of arrays than him. It was just that this array had existed for a long time and had accumulated a huge amount of energy. Now that it had suddenly erupted, it was naturally terrifying. Continuing forward, only the red blood left on the ground showed that a great battle had just broken out here. The two cultivators thought that their cultivation was higher than Lu Ye's and that they had joined forces to launch a sneak attack. Lu Yi had even killed an 8th-order cultivator before. A 7th-order and a 6th-order cultivator weren't enough to deal with him now. After walking for another 10 kilometers, they finally arrived in front of the 100 Formation Tower. Here there was a relatively safe area. With the 100 Formation Tower as the center, the area within 1,000 meters was absolutely safe. Lu Yi looked around and saw that quite a few cultivators had gathered. All of them were formation cultivators. What made Lu Yi feel at ease was that some of them were wearing masks like him. This made him look less unconventional. There was an unspoken rule in the 100 Formation Pagoda. Regardless of one's background, everyone who came here was a formation cultivator. Fighting was not allowed in this area. Because many array cultivators would cultivate here and comprehend the mysteries of the Tao of arrays. If there was a fight, it would definitely affect them. Not only was there no fighting here, even the sound of talking was suppressed to the extreme. Therefore, although there were many array cultivators gathered here, the atmosphere was very peaceful. Some array cultivators sat alone with their eyes closed as they cultivated. There were also array cultivators who sat in pairs and discussed the mysteries of arrays. There were even some who used arrays as a foundation to compare notes. Most people did not know the origins of others. Perhaps one of the two who were discussing the mysteries of arrays was from the Myriad Devil Ridge, while the other was from the Grand Heaven Alliance. Compared to the environment of the Cloudy River battlefield, this was simply a paradise. When Lu Yi had advanced to the Cloudy River realm and was preparing to enter the Cloudy River battlefield, Second senior sister Shui Yuan had told him that the situation in the Cloudy River battlefield was much more complicated than the Spirit Stream battlefield. Because there was no such thing as a sect encampment, cultivators in the Cloudy River battlefield generally did not know each other's factions unless they knew each other. As a result, cultivators from both factions often had the opportunity to coexist peacefully. Sometimes they could even sincerely cooperate. But to Lu Yi, it seemed that all that awaited him was being targeted and hunted down. There was no end to it. Feeling the peace and tranquility here, Lu Yi could not help but sigh inwardly. When would he be able to enjoy the treatment of an ordinary cultivator? However, he also knew that this was ultimately an extravagant hope. His name was already on the list of the major sects of the Myriad Devil Ridge. Countless pairs of eyes were staring at him. When people from the Myriad Devil Ridge encountered him, their only thought was to kill him or call for help to kill him. 7017K. Chapter 673. When Lu Yi arrived in front of the 100 Formation Pagoda, the law cultivator surnamed Yu, who he had injured earlier, was trapped in layers of spirit arrays. There was a huge wound on his chest and abdomen that was bleeding profusely. Such an injury was very serious for a 6th order law cultivator like him, but it wasn't to the point of despair. Even if he was just a law cultivator, his physique was much stronger than ordinary mortals, even if it wasn't as strong as armament cultivators or body cultivators. As long as he recuperated well, he would recover. What made him despair was his current situation. Previously, Lu Yi had opened up a safe passage for him, causing him to fall into the array. Fearing that Lu Yi would chase after him, he had fled as fast as he could as soon as he landed. As a result, he had completely lost his way. Even though he was sure that he wasn't far from the safe passage, he couldn't tell where it was. Since ancient times, countless array cultivators had left various spirit arrays here. With the mysterious cover of the 100 Formation Pagoda, the spirit arrays in this area seemed to have undergone some strange changes. If one didn't have high enough attainments, they wouldn't be able to leave this place alive. There was a skeleton beside him that had been dead for an unknown period of time. The bones had become loose and would shatter upon contact. Looking at this skeleton, the law cultivator surnamed Yu seemed to see his future. Moreover, there was a great danger surrounding him. Even though he couldn't tell what it was, he knew that he had fallen into an extremely dangerous spirit array. Annoyance, regret, and all kinds of emotions surged in his heart. He couldn't understand how a 5th-order armament cultivator could burst out with such power under the joint attack of him and a 7th-order armament cultivator. His companion was killed on the spot and he himself was forced into such a desperate situation. But no matter what, the most important thing right now was to heal his injuries. It wouldn't be too late to break the spirit array here after his injuries had stabilized. Who knows, he might still have a chance of survival. But before that, he had to spread the news that Lu Yi had appeared in the 100 Formation Pagoda. How could he accept such a huge loss? If he couldn't live well, then Lu Yi wouldn't have it easy either. Raising his hand, he tapped on the battlefield mark and a message was sent out. Outside the 100 Formation Pagoda, Lu Yi looked up and counted. He found that the 100 Formation Pagoda here was the same as the one in Heaven Expanse sect, with 33 floors. This meant that the last part of the 100 Formation Pagoda had 34 floors, which was the top. But so far no one knew where this part of the 100 Formation Pagoda was. There was an entrance at the bottom of the 100 Formation Pagoda. When Lu Yi looked over, he saw an array cultivator walking in excitedly before disappearing. Another array cultivator suddenly appeared in front of the entrance. His face was extremely pale, as if he had been severely injured. His body was somewhat unstable. He spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. A cultivator who knew this person cried out in alarm and hurriedly went forward to help this person to the side and feed him a healing spirit pill. Challenging the 100 Formation Pagoda was extremely dangerous. Every level of the pagoda had a different test, but overall the test was divided into 3 types: breaking the formation, setting up the formation, and repairing the formation. Breaking the array meant breaking the array inside the 100 Formation Pagoda. Setting up a formation was a requirement given by the 100 Formation Pagoda, and one had to set up a formation that matched the requirement. As for fixing a formation, it was an extension of setting up a formation. An incomplete or flawed formation would appear in the 100 Formation Pagoda for the challenger to fix it. Don't think that fixing a formation was easy. There was a saying among formation cultivators: it was better to set up 10 formations than fix one. That was because setting up a formation was something one had to do personally right from the start. Everything would be done according to one's train of thought. However, repairing a formation was different. Only God knew how many hidden loopholes and flaws there were in a semi-finished formation. To repair these loopholes and flaws required a lot more time and energy than setting up a formation. While not destroying the foundation of the original formation, one also had to cater to the various ideas of the original formation. In this way, the difficulty was much higher than simply setting up a formation. If the test of the 100 formation pagoda was setting up a formation, there was basically no danger. That was because even if one failed to set up a formation, they would only be sent out by the 100 formation pagoda. However, it was dangerous to break or fix a formation. Something went wrong, the formation would be activated. Even if one didn't die, they would be injured. Every year, a large number of formation cultivators came to challenge the 100 formation pagoda. Many formation cultivators who were confident in their abilities died inside. That was only the danger of the test. Even if one passed the test, there was still a certain amount of danger. That was because after passing the test, the 100 formation pagoda would bestow a reward. It was a kind of reward that allowed the cultivator to receive a large amount of information regarding formation Dao in a short period of time. The effect was similar to Lu Yi checking the information on the talent tree's leaf. However, it was even more violent. When a large amount of information entered one's mind, one's soul would feel like it was being torn apart. The better one performed in the 100 formation pagoda, the more rewards one would receive. The pain of being torn apart would be even more intense. Lu Yi had relied on soul water to survive last time. Therefore, ever since he entered the Cloud River battlefield, he had been keeping an eye out for treasures that could restore his soul. Unfortunately, he hadn't gained anything until he accidentally entered the Immortal Essence City and obtained a large amount of soul water. Only then did he enter the 100 formation pagoda. Of course, the benefits an ordinary formation cultivator would receive in the 100 formation pagoda were not that exaggerated. Lu Ye's performance last time was too outstanding and the benefits he received were too great. This caused him to bear an unprecedented amount of pressure. Under normal circumstances, cultivators who challenged the pagoda would be able to safely endure the benefits they received after passing the test and increase their attainments in formation Dao. This formation cultivator who had suddenly fainted did not have any external injuries. Instead, his face was pale. This meant that he had exhausted too much of his mental strength. This person had undoubtedly gained a lot in the 100 formation pagoda. The benefits he received had already exceeded his limits, causing him to suddenly spit out blood and faint. However, after waking up, this person's attainments in formation Dao would definitely improve significantly. This was a good thing. All sorts of thoughts flashed through Lu Ye's mind. Just as he was about to step into the 100 formation pagoda, he suddenly felt a strange rhythm. This formless rhythm was like a formless wind that radiated in all directions. In the blink of an eye, it had spread over dozens of miles. Outside the 100 formation pagoda, everyone stopped what they were doing and looked at the pagoda in surprise. Someone exclaimed, "It's resonating, it's resonating." It was as if some treasure had fallen from the sky. Although no treasure had fallen from the sky, the resonance of the 100 formation pagoda was a blessing from the heavens to all the formation cultivators who lingered here. Because of this rhythm, formation cultivators would be able to comprehend the mysteries of formation Dao more easily. Perhaps there were many things that they did not understand in the past that they could suddenly be enlightened at this moment and increase their attainments in formation Dao. It was not easy to trigger the resonance of the 100 formation pagoda. One had to achieve good results in the pagoda's tests. Lu Yi had triggered the resonance of the 100 formation pagoda time and time again in the Sky Expanse sect, allowing the formation cultivators of the Sky Expanse sect to benefit greatly. It could be said that after Lu Yi challenged the 100 formation pagoda, the formation Dao attainments of the Sky Expanse sect's disciples had generally increased by a level. One could foresee that in the next 10 to 20 years, the Sky Expanse sect's foundation would definitely strengthen by a lot. It was precisely because of the resonance of the 100 formation pagoda that many formation cultivators would be stationed here all year round. Firstly, they were preparing for their next challenge. Secondly, they were waiting for the resonance that could appear at any time and reap the benefits from it. However, the resonance of the 100 formation pagoda was not so easily triggered. Many formation cultivators entered and exited the 100 formation pagoda every day. However, the resonance would only appear once every 3 to 5 months. To all the formation cultivators gathered here, the resonance of the 100 formation pagoda was an extremely rare experience that could only be encountered by chance. Therefore, when they sensed the strange rhythm of the 100 Formation Pagoda, all the formation cultivators closed their eyes and silently comprehended the mysteries within. Even Lu Yi was rooted to the spot. At this moment, he clearly felt that his thoughts had become much clearer, and all sorts of knowledge about the Tao of Arrays surged through his mind. Many things that he had previously thought he had thoroughly grasped, but now that he thought about it again he was able to gain new insights. The rhythm continued and all the formation cultivators were immersed in it, unable to extricate themselves. After a full incense stick's worth of time, the strange rhythm gradually disappeared. The formation cultivators who were immersed in it came back to their senses and carefully savored their gains. Loud laughter could be heard. Clearly they had gained a lot. The formation cultivators beside them all revealed envious expressions. Although Lu Yi also gained something, it wasn't much. His current attainments in the Array Tao were similar to the power of his spirit, far surpassing cultivators of the same level. This kind of rhythm wasn't of much use to him. If he wanted to raise his attainments in Formation Tao, he still needed to personally challenge the pagoda and obtain good results. At the bottom of the 100 Formation Pagoda in the Sky Expanse sect, there was a stone tablet. According to the Sky Expanse sect's Grand Elder Bai Qian, the stone tablet was probably used to leave a name for those who challenged the pagoda. Those who performed outstandingly would be recorded by the stone tablet for future generations to revere. However, because the 100 Formation Pagoda was divided into 3 parts and the Sky Expanse sect was only one of the 3 parts, the stone tablet was not of any use. The second part of the Cloudy River battlefield was located in the middle of the 100 Formation Pagoda. Naturally, there was no stone tablet. At the bottom there was only a simple entrance. The entrance was pitch black and seemed to be connected to an unknown space. Lu Yi took a few steps forward and arrived at the entrance. Without hesitation he walked in. His vision blurred and he felt as if he had used the Tianji pillar to teleport. When Lu Yi came back to his senses, he had already appeared in a small space. He looked around and realized that the situation was no different from what he had encountered when he challenged the pagoda previously. This small space was not big. It was only the size of a room. It was completely white all around and there was nothing. On the wall beside him there was a protruding stone brick. Based on his previous experience and memory, Lu Yi stepped forward and pressed his hand on the stone brick. With a slight force, the stone brick immediately sank into the wall. 7017K. Chapter 674. As the stone tiles caved in, the surrounding scenery changed. In the blink of an eye, Lu Yi seemed to have traversed countless times and arrived at another place. The surroundings were empty and there was nothing in sight. There was only a light screen visible to the naked eye that enveloped the entire place in a semicircle. The area covered by the light curtain was not small, at least a few miles in radius. Was he trying to break the formation? Lu Yi understood. Generally speaking, if a completed formation appeared in the 100 Formation Pagoda's test, the challenger would have to break it. Lu Yi remembered that his final test in Heaven Expanse Sect's 100 Formation Pagoda was to break a formation as well. Furthermore, it was a defensive formation. It was also because of the experience he gained in the 100 Formation Pagoda that he was able to disregard the defensive formations of the various myriad Devil Ridge encampments as though they were nothing in the Spirit Stream battlefield. He did not expect that the first test of the 100 Formation Pagoda in the Cloud River battlefield would be to break a similar formation as well. Although the scale of this formation was smaller than the previous one, Lu Yi knew that this was not an ordinary test when he saw the thickness of the light screen. If he was not wrong, this formation was much stronger than the defensive formation from the previous time. Thankfully, his attainments in the Tao of formations could not be compared to the past. After such a long time, he had already digested all the benefits he gained from Heaven Expanse Sect's 100 Formation Pagoda. Right now, Lu Ye's attainments in the Tao of formations were several levels higher than before. It was not difficult for him to break a formation as such. He merely needed to expend some effort. He channeled his insight spirit pattern to augment his eyes and looked around, searching for the nodes and flaws of the formation. Before long he realized that something was amiss. This time round he was not trying to break a defensive formation, but a trap formation. At first glance, there was almost no difference between the two formations. They appeared to be enveloped by a layer of light screen, but in reality, they were two completely different formations. Outside the defensive formation and inside the trap formation. If he tried to break the formation without understanding the root of it, he would definitely waste a lot of time. Moreover, under Lu Ye's observation, it was clear that there was more than one trapping array here. There were also several killing arrays hidden within the trapping array. These killing arrays were arranged in an extremely exquisite manner. They had to be broken in advance in order to truly break the trapping array. Otherwise, there was a high chance that he would activate the killing formations first if he tried it rashly. This was clearly a compound formation. As expected of the 100 formation pagoda of the Cloudy River battlefield. The difficulty of the first step was not something an ordinary array cultivator could withstand. However, under the observation of the spirit inscriptions, the nodes and flaws of these formations could not be hidden. After making sure that he hadn't missed anything, Lu Yi immediately began to act. If one wanted to achieve good results in the 100 formation pagodas test, one had to pass the test in the shortest amount of time. No one knew what the standard was because those who challenged the pagoda had no way of communicating with the outside world. They also didn't know if their actions would resonate with the 100 formation pagoda. Therefore, even though the 100 formation pagoda had existed since ancient times, no one could conclude the true pattern. Lu Yi didn't know either, but from his previous experience in the tower, he knew that his performance on the previous floor would be the standard for the next floor. In other words, the level of attainments in the Tao of formations he displayed after completing the test on this level would be closely related to the level of attainments in the Tao of formations he displayed before. If he wanted to obtain a good result, he would have to perform even better. Under normal circumstances, this was naturally impossible. A formation cultivator's attainments in the Tao of formations were not that easy to improve. It was also impossible to continuously break through one's limits in a short period of time. However, this was the 100 formation pagoda. If one's performance was good enough, the 100 formation pagoda would bestow rewards that would increase the formation cultivator's attainments in the Tao of formations. In this way, the impossible would become possible. The difficulty of the 100 formation pagodas test would increase with each level, but if one could obtain a corresponding reward on each level, their attainments in the Tao of formations would also gradually increase. The rewards obtained from challenging the pagoda would eventually form a snowball-like cycle of conscience. As time passed, Lu Yi broke through the hidden killing formations, leaving only the trapping formation in front of him. At this point, the test was actually not that difficult anymore. The real difficulty of this level's test was the hidden killing formations. Once they were activated, not to mention whether one would be injured or even die, it would definitely affect one's final result. The difficulty was not high, but it was quite troublesome. That was because the trapping formation was not weak. It would take some effort for Lu Yi to break through it. Outside the 100 formation pagoda, the formation cultivators were discussing who had triggered the previous resonance. However, there were many formation cultivators entering the 100 formation pagoda every day, and some stayed inside for many days. Therefore, such a discussion would not yield any results. That was because even the person challenging the pagoda could not be sure if they had triggered the 100 formation pagoda's resonance. However, such a good thing that could only happen once every 3 to 5 months was still something to be excited about. The discussion had yet to yield any results when suddenly, there was a strange rhythm that spread out from the 100 formation pagoda. The whisper stopped abruptly. All the formation cultivators instinctively looked in the direction of the 100 formation pagoda, their eyes filled with disbelief. The 100 formation pagoda had resonated once again. What's going on? Some people looked puzzled while others cried out in alarm. The 100 formation pagoda's resonance that could only be encountered once every 3 to 5 months had actually happened twice in such a short period of time today. What kind of person was challenging the pagoda? However, the crowd soon realized that the two resonations were definitely not triggered by the same person. That was because the interval was too short. When array cultivators challenged the tower, after passing the test, they would have a period of rest. This period of time would not be too long, but it would not be too short either. It would allow array cultivators to recover their spiritual power, relieve the pressure on their souls, digest the gifts they had received, and prepare for the next test. No matter which formation cultivator it was, they would cherish such a period of rest and would definitely not start the next test before the time limit was up. Today, the 100 formation pagoda had resonated twice in less than half an hour. It was obvious that it was not triggered by the same person. In other words, there were actually two formation cultivators who had obtained results that could trigger the pagoda's resonance today. Any formation cultivator who could trigger the pagoda's resonance would have a limitless future. Shock, regret, confusion, and many other emotions were quickly suppressed by the formation cultivators. No matter who triggered the resonance, it was ultimately a good thing for them. Many of them felt that the previous resonance was not enough. Now that there was another resonance so quickly, they might be able to understand some of the mysteries that they did not understand earlier. Therefore, in an instant, the outside of the 100 Formation Pagoda fell silent once more. All the formation cultivators closed their eyes and felt the enlightenment that the formless rhythm had for them. Inside the 100 Formation Pagoda, in a space the size of a small room, Lu Ye's expression was calm as he looked at the ball of fluorescent light descending from the sky. Although it had been a long time since he had seen such a scene, Lu Ye's eyelids twitched instinctively. That was because the rewards from the 100 Formation Pagoda were not that easy to obtain. Especially since he had only spent half an hour to pass the test this time. The benefits contained within should not be small. In other words, the impact on his soul was also huge. However, this was a process that had to be experienced. It was a blessing, not a curse. Gritting his teeth, Lu Yi reached out to grab the ball of fluorescent light. The fluorescent light broke upon contact. As though attracted by an invisible force, the specks of light shuddered slightly before surging towards Lu Ye's head. Lu Yi only felt the specks of light before his eyes as though the entire starry sky was overturning him. The powerful pressure made it difficult for him to breathe. Then, a stifled groan sounded. Lu Ye's entire body trembled as though he was struck by lightning. His face turned pale at a speed visible to the naked eye. His soul seemed to be torn apart by an invisible force. Then, a large amount of array formation information flowed uncontrollably into his soul and was stirred vigorously. In the process of stirring, his soul continued to shatter. The power of Lu Ye's soul was far beyond that of cultivators of the same level. It had already reached the standard of the true lake stage. With a strong soul, his tolerance was naturally strong. Under normal circumstances, he could ignore the impact on his soul. For example, when he was checking the information on the talent tree's leaf, or when he died during the training in the Mirage, he no longer felt as painful as before. These were the benefits of a strong soul. However, the torment this time was still unbearable. The main reason was that the benefits he had received were too great. Moreover, this method of enlightenment was too barbaric and overbearing. If other cultivators of the Cloud River stage encountered such a thing, even if their soul was not destroyed, they would lose their spiritual intelligence and become mentally retarded. There were also benefits. As a large amount of information flowed uncontrollably into his soul, Lu Ye's understanding of array formation also deepened. His array formation attainments also improved correspondingly. This would bring him more advantages in the upcoming trials of the tower. Amidst the unbearable pain, the taste of blood came from Lu Ye's mouth. This was blood from his teeth being clenched. With trembling hands, he reached into the spirit beast pouch and took out Hoopa, who had been inside it all this time. Oh whoa! As soon as Hoopa appeared, it saw Lu Ye's miserable state and couldn't help but tremble. It immediately became vigilant, thinking that Lu Yi had been attacked. Yi also hurriedly flashed out of Hoopo's body. Soul cleansing water. Lu Yi growled through clenched teeth. Yi immediately reacted. Lu Ye's soul had suffered a huge impact. She took out the jade bottle containing soul cleansing water, dipped her hand into it and stuffed it into Lu Ye's mouth. The unique taste of soul cleansing water bloomed in his mouth and spread throughout his body. The extreme pain was instantly suppressed, and the piercing and tearing pain in his soul was slowly soothed. In a short while, Lu Ye's face regained its color. No treasure could compare to the effect of soul cleansing water in this kind of situation where the soul had suffered a huge impact. Lu Yi let out a long breath. He secretly decided that the next time he accepted a gift from the 100 Formation Tower, he would first release Hoopa and Yi. 7017K. Chapter 675. This is the 100 Formation Pagoda? Yi looked around in surprise. What rich and pure spiritual energy. The 100 Formation Pagoda's gift was not only the knowledge of formations. After a cultivator passed the test, a large amount of pure and rich heaven and earth spiritual chi would appear. Cultivators could use this place to quickly recover their energy and prepare for the next test. While Lu Ye's soul was overwhelmed by the huge amount of information, a large amount of spiritual energy suddenly emerged in this small space. The small room was almost filled with white fog. Having traveled extensively with Lu Yi, Yi wasn't someone who hadn't seen the world. She had stayed in both Grade C and Grade A spirit lands. What surprised her was that the density and purity of the spiritual energy here was even more exaggerated than Grade A spirit lands. It was almost to the extent that it could only be obtained by using spirit lots. She tested it and found that her intuition was right. Even if the spiritual energy here wasn't as good as using spirit lots, it wasn't far off. She could quickly absorb it and improve her foundation. Such a cultivation environment could be said to be the dream of any cultivator. Therefore Yi didn't hesitate at all and hurriedly started cultivating. On the side, the pain in Lu Ye's soul gradually subsided under the effect of the soul-cleansing water. Large amounts of knowledge regarding formations surged in his mind, all of which he had never come into contact with before. However, he wasn't in a hurry to investigate these things. Instead, he first constructed small spirit-gathering funnels on his body. The current him didn't have any difficulty in constructing these small spirit-gathering funnels. It could be said that a small spirit-gathering funnel would take shape with just a thought. As the funnels appeared, a devouring power came from his body and devoured the surrounding spiritual energy. As the number of small spirit-gathering funnels increased, the devouring power also became stronger. In the end, Lu Ye's entire body seemed to have turned into an invisible vortex. One could see with the naked eye that the spiritual energy was constantly flowing in his direction and then disappearing. Although he had already guessed that the spiritual energy in the 100 Formation Pagoda would be very pure, the result still exceeded Lu Ye's expectations. This kind of cultivation efficiency that was comparable to using spirit lots was definitely what he needed the most now. The strength of his soul far exceeded his physical strength. In the end, it was still a hidden danger. If he could improve his cultivation in the 100 Formation Pagoda this time, he could resolve this hidden danger. The method of constructing small spirit-gathering funnels for cultivation and recovery had helped Lu Yi a lot on many occasions. Just like now. When ordinary formation cultivators came here, even if they passed the test and obtained the rewards, they would have to quickly recover. During this process they had to concentrate and couldn't do anything else. And they wouldn't be able to improve too much in a short period of time, which would affect their performance on the next level. Of course. Of the 100 Formation Pagoda. Of them. But Lu Yi was different. After the small funnel was completed, he allowed the surrounding spirit mist to enter his body. He could fully immerse himself in comprehending the gifts of the 100 Formation Pagoda. He had more time than other array cultivators to use these gifts to improve his array Dao attainments. His mind was immersed and time passed. Then, at a certain moment, the surrounding spiritual fog suddenly disappeared without a trace. Of it? He silently estimated that it had been about 6 hours since he entered the 100 Formation Pagoda. This was about the same as the previous Pagoda challenge. Every level of the 100 Formation Pagoda had a time limit of 6 hours. Those who passed the test within this time limit would receive the rewards of the 100 Formation Pagoda. Therefore, the less time one spent in the test, the greater the rewards, and the more time one would have to recover and comprehend. Lu Yi only spent half an hour to break through the first level. He spent the rest of the time reaping the benefits. The river of spirit power in his body had clearly grown stronger. His greatest gain was in the area of formations. That gift was so huge that his spirit couldn't bear it. The benefits it brought to his formation were unimaginable. He naturally couldn't fully comprehend it in less than 6 hours. But even so, it was enough for him to take a step forward in his formation Dao. It was more than enough for him to deal with the next level's test. Lu Yi was very confident in this. Lu Yi didn't need to give any instructions. Yi had already flashed into Hu Po's body. Hu Po reluctantly walked over to Lu Yi, who grabbed it and stuffed it into the spirit beast pouch. Just as he was done, he couldn't help but feel like he was being transported. He appeared in another small space similar to the previous one. A stone brick protruded from the wall beside him. Time was of the essence. Lu Yi didn't hesitate. He walked up to the brick and pressed it down. As the brick fell, the scenery around him changed. Lu Yi appeared in an extremely spacious area. A dot of fluorescent light suddenly appeared in front of him. He raised his hand and touched it. A message immediately appeared in his mind. The test this time was to set up a formation according to the 100 Formation Pagoda's requirements. The required formation wasn't anything difficult. It was just a spirit-gathering formation. It could be said that the first formation Lu Yi knew how to set up was a spirit-gathering formation. That was because he had obtained spirit-gathering spirit runes earlier. But the 100 Formation Pagoda's test naturally wasn't that simple. There were requirements for the range of the formation, the number of formation flags used, and the effects achieved. There was a minimum standard to pass this level's test. With Lu Ye's current attainments in formations, it wasn't difficult to reach the minimum standard. Almost as soon as he discovered this level's test, Lu Yi already had several plans in his mind. But he naturally wasn't satisfied with reaching the minimum standard. In a test like this, the better he could do, the greater the reward he would receive. Standing in place, Lu Yi pondered for a moment. Soon, a plan formed in his mind and he immediately put it into action. Formation flags flew in all directions, forming the basic framework of the formation. Lu Yi then activated the spirit-gathering spirit runes to form the core of the formation. As his spirit energy surged, his powerful spirit energy allowed him to perfectly control the subtle changes in his spirit energy. Complex runes took shape in the framework of the formation, transforming into the embryonic form of a large formation. To him, this level's test was actually simpler than the previous one. It required less effort. Thus, in just half an incense stick's worth of time, a large spirit-gathering formation was formed. When the last rune was embedded, the entire formation was activated and activated. The surrounding scenery changed once more. Like a bubble popping, Lu Yi reappeared in the small sealed room. Large amounts of rich and pure heaven and earth spirit energy surged out of thin air, accompanied by a ball of fluorescent light. Following his previous plan, Lu Yi first released Hu Po from the spirit beast pouch. Almost without any instructions, Yi flashed out and took out the jade bottle containing the soul water, ready for battle. Looking at each other, Yi nodded slightly. Only then did Lu Yi raise his hand and point at the ball of fluorescent light. The fluorescent light shattered, and he once again felt as if the entire starry sky was about to collapse. Outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. Today, the 100 Formation Pagoda had resonated twice in less than half an incense stick's worth of time apart. The formation cultivators gathered here were rather excited. After all, this was a grand occasion that they had never encountered before. It also gave them a lot of excitement to talk about. When Lu Yi had arrived earlier, some of the formation cultivators here were sparring, some were meditating with their eyes closed, and some were even discussing the Tao. But now, all the formation cultivators were gathered in groups of 3 to 5, talking loudly about something. This was a scene that was rarely seen on normal days. Usually, even if the formation cultivators here were discussing the Tao, they would control their volume and not disturb others. But today's grand occasion had broken the shackles of the past and allowed them to indulge themselves. Even though they weren't the ones who had triggered the 100 Formation Pagoda's resonance, they still felt honored to have encountered such an event. There were even formation cultivators guarding the entrance of the 100 Formation Pagoda, asking everyone they met if they were the ones who had triggered the resonance. But they couldn't get a definite answer. I wonder who the 2 Taoists who triggered the resonance are. If we can confirm their identities, perhaps we can ask them for advice. What a pity, what a pity. A youth in green said. Those who could trigger the 100 Formation Pagoda's resonance here would definitely be formation experts in the future. Naturally, everyone would be happy to befriend such people. It wasn't shameful to ask them for advice on formations. As for factions, the unique atmosphere of the 100 Formation Pagoda had blurred the boundaries of factions. The cultivators here were all formation cultivators who yearned for the Tao of formations. But it was a pity that the people outside didn't know who had triggered the resonance. Even those who challenged the pagoda might not know that they had triggered the resonance. Taoist Luo has already passed the 50th level. Your future is bound to be limitless. You might not lose out to others. Someone flattered from the side. The 100 Formation Pagoda in the Cloud River battlefield started from the 34th level. This cultivator surnamed Luo had passed the 50th level, which was an extremely impressive result. One had to know that many of the formation cultivators here hadn't even passed the 40th level. Their method of challenging the 100 Formation Pagoda was different from Lu Ye's. They basically challenged one level at a time. If they failed, there was nothing to say. Even if they succeeded, they would exhaust themselves and the pressure on their spirit would force them to leave the pagoda first and enter again when they were ready. The 100 Formation Pagoda would record the levels they had passed. The next time they entered, they would directly go to the next level. It wasn't just the Cloud River battlefield. It was the same when the cultivators of the Sky Expanse sect challenged the 100 Formation Pagoda. That was why Lu Yi had caused such a huge uproar in the Sky Expanse sect when he had passed the 33rd level in one go. However, this news didn't spread because under the orders of the Sky Expanse sect Master Yu Xiao and Head Elder Bai Qian, all the Sky Expanse sect disciples who knew of this news swore a heavenly secret oath to never spread the news of Lu Ye's challenge. 7017K. Chapter 676. The Sky Expanse sect's measures were undoubtedly to protect Lu Yi. After all, Lu Yi had given Bai Qian some soul-cleansing water back then. For Bai Qian and Yu Xiao, who were stuck at the 9th Order True Lake Realm, soul-cleansing water was the treasure they coveted the most. With the help of soul-cleansing water, they had hopes of breaking through their shackles and reaching the Spirit Sea realm. However, from what had happened afterwards, it seemed that Lu Yi had stirred up quite a bit of trouble in the Spirit Stream battlefield and had been targeted by the Myriad Devil Ridge. Even now, the cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge still wanted to kill him. Many of the 100 Formation Pagoda's array cultivators had stayed here for a long time and were familiar with each other. The cultivator surnamed Luo who had spoken earlier was one of the best. Passing the 50th level of the 100 Formation Pagoda was something to be proud of in the entire Cloudy River battlefield. Amidst the crowd of formation cultivators, Cultivator Luo smiled bitterly and shook his head. My master once said that my talent is neither good nor bad. In this lifetime of formation Dao, I am not a grandmaster, but I have no hopes of becoming a grandmaster. There was no way he could become a master, but there was no hope for him to become a grandmaster. This was the evaluation his master had given him. To put it simply, it was not a problem for him to become an array master, but it was basically impossible for him to become a grandmaster. In the past, Cultivator Luo wasn't too convinced by this evaluation. However, as he spent more time at the 100 Formation Pagoda, he had no choice but to accept reality. Ever since he passed the 50th floor of the 100 Formation Pagoda, he had already attempted to pass the 51st floor 3 times. However, he had failed all 3 times. Perhaps if he cultivated bitterly for a few more days, he might be able to pass the 51st floor, but what about after that? The 100 Formation Pagoda had 66 levels. The further one went, the more difficult the test would be. Even if he spent his entire life here, he might not be able to pass all 66 levels of the 100 Formation Pagoda. However, even if he was a formation cultivator, how could he be willing to be stuck at the Cloud River tier forever? Now that he was already at the 9th Order Cloud River realm, he was qualified to break through to the True Lake realm, but he had not chosen to do so because he was obsessed with advancing further in the 100 Formation Tower. However, what he saw and heard today was like the evening drum and morning bell that woke him up. In this world, everyone's aptitude was different. Others could easily resonate with the 100 Formation Pagoda when they entered, but he never had the capital to do so. In the end, as a cultivator, cultivation was still the most important thing. In his heart, he decided to try one last time. This time, regardless of whether he succeeded or failed, he would choose to advance to the True Lake stage and leave the Cloudy River battlefield. Fellow Taoist Luo, there's no need to belittle yourself. Before the formation cultivator could finish speaking, he suddenly stopped. At the same time, the surrounding noises quieted down. All the array cultivators looked at the 100 Formation Pagoda in shock. That strange rhythm had appeared again. The third resonance of the 100 Formation Pagoda. What's the situation? Some array cultivators even suspected that they were dreaming. In the past, the resonance would only appear once every 3 to 5 months. It was already shocking enough that it appeared twice today, but there was actually a third time? Which powerhouse had triggered this resonance? Why are there so many genius array cultivators challenging the 100 Formation Pagoda today? All sorts of emotions surged, but it did not stop the array cultivators from making the most appropriate response. It was rare for the 100 Formation Pagoda to resonate, and that peculiar rhythm was very beneficial to array cultivators' enlightenment. Therefore, all the array cultivators hurriedly sat up straight and concentrated, silently comprehending. On the 35th level of the 100 Formation Pagoda, Lu Yi once again used his spirit cleansing skills to alleviate the impact and pain on his soul. He began to construct a small spirit gathering funnel, and as he cultivated, he comprehended his gains and prepared for the next level's test. In the blink of an eye, another 6 hours had passed. The test on the 36th level had begun. The array cultivators outside the 100 Formation Pagoda gradually went crazy. This was because something incomprehensible had happened in the past 2 days. After the first resonance of the 100 Formation Pagoda, the second resonance followed after half an hour. 6 hours later, the third resonance followed. Another 6 hours passed. Another 6 hours passed. Another 6 hours passed. Another 6 hours passed. After that, the 100 Formation Pagoda would resonate once every 6 hours. Was the 100 Formation Pagoda broken? Almost all the array cultivators could not help but have this thought. Otherwise, how could there be so many consecutive resonations? However, after some array cultivators boldly entered the 100 Formation Pagoda to test it out, they confirmed that there was nothing wrong with the pagoda. In other words, the 100 Formation Pagoda was not broken. These resonations were really caused by an array cultivator challenging the pagoda. At first, The array cultivators thought that the resonations were caused by different array cultivators. However, as time passed and the number of resonations increased, everyone realized that this was not the case. This was because the time between each resonance was almost 6 hours. This time was almost the same as the time limit for every level of the 100 formation pagoda. This was thought-provoking. The array cultivators couldn't help but think of an unimaginable possibility. There was an unimaginably talented array cultivator challenging the pagoda and obtaining excellent results on every level. That was why the 100 formation pagoda resonated with him every time. But, was this really possible? This was simply unimaginable. But other than this explanation, there seemed to be no other better explanation. What could be confirmed now was that the array cultivator who triggered the first and second resonance was not the same person. Because the time interval was too short. What the array cultivators could not figure out was whether the subsequent resonations were triggered by the first person or the second person. The news continued to spread. 30 miles away, 100 Formation City was also in an uproar as a large number of array cultivators rushed over. Usually, many array cultivators lived in the 100 Formation City. Only a small portion of the array cultivators lingered outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. However, as the news spread, more than 1,000 array cultivators gathered outside the 100 Formation Pagoda in less than half a day. Moreover, even more array cultivators were on their way. No one wanted to miss such a grand event. No one wanted to miss such an opportunity. Although they were not the ones challenging the pagoda and resonating with the pagoda, they still benefited greatly from the enlightenment. Soon, the area outside the 100 Formation Pagoda was packed with people. As far as the eye could see, a sea of black heads had found a place to sit down cross-legged. Fellow Taoist Luo, this is the 10th time, right? A familiar cultivator near the array cultivator surnamed Luo asked. The array cultivator surnamed Luo nodded. Yes, it's the 10th time. On average, there was a resonance every 6 hours. Now, almost 60 hours had passed. The previous resonance was indeed the 10th time. From the initial confusion to shock to the current numbness, this was the true portrayal of his heart. It was also the true portrayal of all the array cultivators gathered here. Even these Cloud River tier cultivators, who were all at the Cloud River tier, were shocked to the core by the repeated occurrences of events that were rarely seen on a daily basis. In fact, these occurrences even occurred in a regular pattern. I keep feeling that this is not man-made, but rather a reaction of the 100 Formation Pagoda itself, another person said. Even though they had already verified that there was no problem with the 100 Formation Pagoda, many still felt that the resonations were not man-made. Perhaps some unknown change had occurred in the 100 Formation Pagoda. Of course, this change was something the array cultivators were happy to see. If the 100 Formation Pagoda could maintain such a resonance from now on, the array Dao of the entire 9 provinces would definitely rise to a new level. After being enlightened again and again, even the stupidest of array cultivators would have gained quite a bit of knowledge. Gazing in the direction of the 100 Formation Pagoda, the array cultivator surnamed Luo did not speak. No one knew whether the resonations were man-made or a reaction of the 100 Formation Pagoda itself. If it was the latter, then so be it, but if it was the former, then the person challenging the pagoda must be a rare genius. The level of array Dao he could reach would be unreachable by all the array cultivators in the 9 provinces. He couldn't help but think of something. When he had returned to the sect last time, his master had told him that someone had once challenged the 33rd level of the 100 Formation Pagoda in one go, triggering 33 resonations. And that person was the famous Wuxia of the Jade Blood sect. To be honest, if his master hadn't told him these things, he wouldn't have believed it no matter what. Challenging 33 levels in one go and triggering 33 resonations, was this something a human could do? His master had not told him this to discourage him, but to warn him that there was always someone better than him in the field of array Dao. He did not want him to be too stubborn. He had not thought too much about it before, but now that he thought about it, his heart suddenly thumped. Could it be that the person challenging the pagoda was Wuxia? Since he could trigger 33 resonations in the 100 Formation Pagoda, his performance in the 100 Formation Pagoda on the Cloudy River battlefield would not be too bad. Array cultivators were entering and exiting the 100 Formation Pagoda frequently, so he had not noticed whether it was Wuxia who had entered the pagoda. But even if it was really him, his performance was too exaggerated. The difficulty of the 100 Formation Pagoda on the Cloudy River battlefield was incomparable to that of the 100 Formation Pagoda on the Cloudy River battlefield. Just as his thoughts were churning in his mind, a strange rhythm appeared once again. Someone in the crowd exclaimed, "It's the 11th time." This number had already excluded the first resonance and counted from the second resonance. Because the array cultivators could confirm that the person who had triggered the first and second resonance was not the same person, but the person who had triggered the subsequent resonance was definitely one of the two. 11 resonations in a row was such a terrifying result. Since ancient times, no array cultivator had ever achieved it. Even if someone had managed to trigger consecutive resonations, it was at most 2 or 3 times. 11 resonations not only broke the previous record, but also stood at a height that a junior array cultivator could not hope to achieve. Lu Yi's talent in array Dao was not bad, but he was far from the level of an eternal genius that cultivator surnamed Luo had imagined. The reason he was invincible in the 100 Formation Pagoda was because of the soul-cleansing water. This soul treasure that could make divine sea cultivators jealous was now being used by him to calm the impact on his soul, alleviating the pain and pressure. 7017K. Chapter 677. If any divine sea realm cultivator were to find out that Lu Yi was using the soul-cleansing water to calm his spirit, they would definitely reprimand him for being a wastrel. Without the soul-cleansing water, Lu Yi would only be able to clear 3 or 4 levels before collapsing. However, with the soul-cleansing water relieving the pressure on his spirit, he could do things that ordinary cultivators would not dare to imagine. Huge gains. After clearing level after level, his attainments and formations could be said to have improved by leaps and bounds. Compared to 2 days ago, his attainments and formations could be said to have risen by a level. Such gains were something that many formation cultivators could not hope to achieve in their entire lives. However, for him it was merely a matter of a day and a half. This was the 100 Formation Pagoda. The mysteries of this pagoda were far beyond the imagination of the world. Before Lu Yi, no one had been able to exploit the mysteries of the 100 Formation Pagoda to such an extent. Passing a levels test in an extremely short amount of time, and then obtaining enormous benefits. After resting for nearly 6 hours, he would enter the next level in his peak state. Passing an even more difficult test, he would obtain even more benefits. It was truly like a rolling snowball, forming a virtuous cycle. Compared to the gains and formations, the improvement in one's cultivation was secondary. In fact, Lu Yi did not even pay much attention to this matter. After each test, he would construct a small spirit-gathering funnel immediately and then leave it be. He did not deliberately calculate how many levels he had cleared. In any case, as long as he had the soul-cleansing water, he felt that even if the 100 Formation Pagoda was complete and there were 100 levels, he would be able to clear them all in one go. At a certain moment, Lu Yi was carefully comprehending the gift from the 100 Formation Pagoda when a buzzing sound came from within his body. It was a sound akin to the surging waves of a great river. Immediately he snapped out of his trance and sensed his body. It wasn't until this moment that he realized that the spiritual energy river in his body was extremely full. As the small spiritual energy gathering funnel scattered around his body continued to work, pure and rich spiritual energy was constantly being absorbed into his body. The feeling of fullness became more and more intense. He was about to break through. He had an epiphany and immediately guarded his mind. The movement of the river became more and more obvious, and the sound of the waves became clearer and clearer. At this moment, the long river of spiritual energy seemed to have a life of its own, constantly contracting and expanding. Until a certain moment, along with the expansion of the river of spirit energy, an invisible wave of spirit energy spread out from Lu Yi. As the wave of spirit energy spread out, the invisible shackles in his body were also broken, and the feeling of fullness disappeared. All kinds of strange noises quieted down in an instant. The surging spirit power quickly circulated in the long river, and the speed of the spirit power flow was a bit faster than before. Lu Yi also felt as if she had been reborn. 6th Order Cloud River Realm. Silently sensing his body, Lu Yi could clearly feel that the volume of the long river of spiritual power in his body was much larger than before. When a cultivator is in the spirit stream realm, the main goal of cultivation is to open one spirit aperture after another. At the Great Circle there are 360 spirit apertures. Of course, everyone's aptitude is different. Most cultivators are unable to open 360 spirit apertures. Some can only open 200 spirit apertures, while others can open 300 spirit apertures. The spirit stream realm is the foundation of a cultivator. At this level, the number of spirit apertures you open will basically affect the cultivator's lifetime achievements. Naturally, the more spirit apertures you open, the better. However, the heavens will always leave a way out. Even if you don't reach the Great Circle realm, a cultivator can still advance to the Cloud River realm. However, the minimum requirement is to open 240 spirit apertures and learn a heaven-grade secret art. This is because only the heaven-grade secret art can allow a cultivator to connect all the spirit apertures together and form a long river of spirit energy. Only when the long river of spirit energy is formed in the body can a cultivator be considered to have advanced to the Cloud River realm. At the Cloud River realm, a cultivator has to continuously increase the volume of the long river of spirit energy in their body until this long river of spirit energy covers their entire body. At that time, the long river of spirit energy is not just a long river, but a lake of spirit energy that accumulates in the cultivator's body. This is the true lake realm. When spirit energy covers the entire body, a cultivator's control of spirit energy will rise to a whole new level. Therefore, the strength of a true lake realm cultivator is much stronger than a Cloud River realm cultivator. Although a Cloud River realm cultivator can also use their spirit energy to cover every corner of their body, in the end, there is still a process of spirit energy flow. The spirit energy needs to flow out from the long river of spirit energy, and then under the cultivator's control, it flows to the appropriate location. However, on a true lake realm cultivator, even a random piece of skin contains pure spirit energy. Lu Yi has advanced to the 6th order Cloud River realm, and is only 3 minor realms away from the true lake realm. Moreover, he could feel that the improvement brought about by his advancement this time was much greater than before. This is a strange thing. Every realm of a cultivator is divided into 9 minor realms. Generally speaking, the 4th and 7th realms are the thresholds. The advancement of the 4th order and 7th order realms often gives people the feeling of a sudden increase in strength. There seems to be no such thing in the 6th order realm. But soon Lu Yi figured out the reason. Previously, he received the baptism of the Heaven's Secret Bestowment in Fox Immortal Valley, which greatly increased his foundation. The increase in foundation will not be immediately apparent, but will slowly reveal itself as his cultivation increases. In other words, the growth of other cultivators from the 5th order Cloud River realm to the 6th order realm is not as great as Lu Yi's. For him, this is naturally a good thing. There are always people from Myriad Demon Ridge watching him, chasing and intercepting him all day long, so the stronger he is, the more capital he has to protect himself. The hidden danger that Lu Yi was worried about is also solved. When he returned from Immortal Essence City, he always had a faint feeling that his body could not accommodate his soul. Now that his cultivation has increased, that feeling disappeared. Of course, this is only temporary. He has so much soul-cleansing water in his hands, and this time he is still continuously consuming it in the 100 Formation Pagoda. Although it is to relieve the pressure on his soul and the impact of the huge amount of information, it is also silently strengthening his soul. If this continues, it is very likely that the hidden danger that has just been solved will appear again. Therefore, the road of cultivation is long and heavy. This kind of happiness is difficult for the other cultivators of the 9 states to understand. How many levels have I passed? Lu Yi collected his thoughts and asked. 15, who was meditating, answered. There were 15 floors, and each floor had less than 6 hours of cultivation time. The cultivation environment here was almost the same as using the spirit lots. In total, the time he spent cultivating in the 100 Formation Pagoda was equivalent to using 3 golden spirit lots. 3 golden spirit lots are naturally not enough for him to break through, but after the Fox Immortal Valley, he has taken a large number of spirit pills every day. After such a long time, he has already taken a large step forward in the 5th order realm. The 100 Formation Pagoda has a total of 33 levels, which means that there are 18 more levels, which can provide him with 3 more golden spirit lots. It is not enough to break through to the 7th order Cloud River realm, but it can increase his cultivation by a lot, shortening the time he needs to break through. It is a bit of a fly in the ointment, but it is still acceptable. The small space fell silent again. Continued to cultivate, while Hoopa swallowed a monster core and fell asleep at the side. Lu Yi also immersed himself in comprehending the gift of the 100 Formation Pagoda. Time passed by, and when the surrounding world energy suddenly disappeared, Lu Yi stood up and waited for the next test. Outside the 100 Formation Pagoda, there is a sea of people. Almost half of the people in 100 Formation City ran over, and there are many who have received the news and are rushing over in a hurry. In the beginning, there were still people who thought that the resonance of the 100 Formation Pagoda was caused by someone, but now there are not many who still think so. Because it is too exaggerated. In 5 days, a total of 20 resonances, which is an average of 1 every 6 hours. This is not something that can be done by a human. After confirming that it was not caused by an array cultivator, most of the array cultivators felt much better. People are like this after all. Sometimes they don't care too much about their mediocrity, or they have already accepted it, but if there is someone too outstanding they will always feel inferior. Fortunately, such a thing did not happen. The resonance of the 100 Formation Pagoda was not caused by someone. Only the cultivator surnamed Luo would raise his head to look at the 100 Formation Pagoda from time to time in his free time, his heart constantly churning with doubts. Is that person challenging the pagoda? Is the resonance really not caused by someone? But whether it was man-made or not, he had reaped a great harvest this time. Originally, he had no confidence in passing the 51st level, but in these 5 days, under the 20 resonations of enlightenment, he felt that his array Dao had clearly improved. He was also confident that he could pass the 51st level. He was not in a hurry to move because he was not sure if there would be more resonances. Turning his head to look around, the noise and clamor around him made him frown. When did the outside of the 100 Formation Pagoda become so chaotic? In the past, although there were many cultivators gathered here, they were all array cultivators. They would be careful not to disturb others when they gathered here to discuss the Tao, but now, with so many people, the scene was chaotic. The cultivator surnamed Luo shook his head and did not pay attention to it, carefully reflecting on his enlightenment just now. At this moment, in front of the safe passage leading from 100 Formation City to the 100 Formation Pagoda, a few figures rushed over, covered in dust. If Lu Yi was here he would probably cry out in alarm that they were haunting him. It could not be helped, because the few people who came here were all 9th Order cultivators who had chased after him before. Xiao Liang, Tan Xing, Sacred Flame Sects Chu Yun and Zhou Pei were among them. They had chased after Lu Yi to the Pai River, but in the end, Lu Yi was rescued by a mysterious woman and escaped with the help of a transmission array. Just as they were worrying about where to find Lu Ye's whereabouts, they suddenly received news that Lu Yi had appeared outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. Thinking that Lu Yi was an array cultivator, it was reasonable for him to run to the 100 Formation Pagoda. So these people rushed here in a hurry, afraid that Lu Yi would escape again if they were late. They did not come together but just happened to arrive here together. It could be considered a coincidence. 7017K. Chapter 679. In the cultivation world of the 9 prefectures, there were many types of formation flags. There were a total of 108 types, which corresponded to the number of heavenly spirits and earthly fiends. Every formation required different formation flags, and the combination of different formation flags could often bring unexpected changes to the formation. Therefore, brilliant formation cultivators had their own unique understanding and experience in the use of formation flags. The same formation might have different power when set up by different formation cultivators. This was not only dependent on the formation cultivator's level of attainment, but also the choice of formation flags. There were many ways to do this. He had obtained 32 formation flags from the 100 Formation Pagoda and 32 more this time. Altogether he had a total of 64 flags. Although it was not enough to complete a set, 64 formation flags were enough to deal with most situations. Moreover, Lu Yi usually did not use these special formation flags. He would either refine them himself or buy them from the Tianji treasury. It would not be a pity even if they were damaged or lost. After inspecting the 32 formation flags, Lu Yi carefully put them away. Then he began to construct small spirit-gathering funnels. He cultivated while comprehending the enormous amount of formation information in his mind. He had passed the 33rd level of the 100 Formation Pagoda. There was no more level. When the time limit for staying on this level was up, he would be sent out of the pagoda. Vaguely, Lu Yi felt that he had forgotten something. Normally this would not have happened to him. However, his spirit was now full and he did not have the energy to think about other things. He had even forgotten to release Hooper earlier. It did not seem to be a particularly important matter. Lu Yi decided not to think too much about it. 6 hours passed in the blink of an eye. When the surrounding spirit chi suddenly dissipated, Lu Yi felt an enormous and irresistible repulsive force. He had to leave. He silently sensed his body's condition. Apart from the enormous pressure on his spirit, everything else was fine. It could be said that he had gained a lot from the 100 Formation Pagoda this time. It was several times more than what he had gained in the Sky Expanse sect. At the very least, he had not felt his spirit being full in the Sky Expanse sect. This meant that the gift he had gained in the 100 Formation Pagoda this time could not be compared to the previous time. And this was under the premise that the power of his spirit was several times stronger than before. Even though such gains had already allowed his attainments in the Tao of Formations to increase greatly, it still hadn't arrived at its limits. Once he digested and stabilized all the things in his mind one day, he wondered how much his attainments in the Tao of Formations would improve. In addition, Yang Kai's cultivation had risen from the 5th order to the 6th order. Although it was only a small advancement, his strength had undoubtedly increased significantly. As the repulsive force surged, the space around Lu Yi began to distort. Instinctively, he put the amber back into his spirit beast pouch. Then he activated his spirit energy to protect himself. He raised his hand and placed it on the hilt of the Pan Shan saber at his waist. He didn't know what he was guarding against, but he felt that it was the right thing to do. In the next moment, his vision blurred and he appeared at the entrance of the 100 Formation Pagoda. The scene that entered his field of vision stunned Lu Yi, because as far as the eye could see, there was a sea of people. Were there so many people outside the 100 Formation Pagoda? He vaguely remembered that there were quite a few people here when he first arrived, but it wasn't to this extent. The moment he appeared, countless pairs of eyes focused on him. All of them revealed astonished expressions. Because the 100 Formation Pagoda had been resonating these days, none of the array cultivators chose to challenge the pagoda. Those who had challenged the pagoda before had already come out. Therefore, when they saw Lu Yi appear, the nearby array cultivators couldn't help but be stunned. No one knew when Lu Yi had entered or how he had come out of the 100 Formation Pagoda at this time. Among the countless pairs of astonished eyes, Lu Yi felt a few sharp gazes. Looking up, he saw a few familiar faces. Lu Yi came to a realization. He finally understood what he had forgotten and what he was guarding against. Previously, when he was rushing to the safe passage of the 100 Formation Pagoda, he had been attacked by 2 myriad demons ridge cultivators. In the end, he killed one of them and the other was severely injured. He had opened the safe passage with a slash of his saber. He didn't know whether the other was dead or alive. Such injuries were very serious, but for cultivators they shouldn't be fatal in a short period of time. Since the other party had recognized him and suffered such a huge loss, as long as he didn't die immediately, he would definitely send a message to the outside world and call for friends. In that case, his whereabouts would be exposed. In other places he could hide and escape, but in the 100 Formation Pagoda, there was only one exit. As long as he came out of the 100 Formation Pagoda, he would definitely be blocked. The pressure on his soul made him forget about this for a moment, but his instincts were still there. Therefore, even if he forgot before he was expelled from the 100 Formation Pagoda, he still put the amber into his spirit beast bag and assumed a defensive posture. As many thoughts flashed through his mind, a sharp saber light had already spread out in his field of vision. Xia Liang and Tan Sheng had been guarding the exit of the 100 Formation Pagoda, so they noticed Lu Yi as soon as he appeared. Without any hesitation, Xia Liang drew his saber and slashed. The distance of several meters was covered in a flash. This slash was accompanied by an abnormal surge of spirit energy, fully displaying the might of a 9th order cultivator. At the same time, Tan Sheng also brandished his spear. The great spear seemed to come alive, like a dragon emerging from the sea, and stabbed towards Lu Yi with an unparalleled might. A pincer attack from 2 Cloud River Realm 9th Order cultivators. At such a close distance, ordinary people wouldn't be able to react at all. Success. Xia Liang and Tan Sheng roared in their hearts at the same time. Their days of waiting here had not been in vain. They had actually managed to trap Lu Yi here. Just as they were thinking this, Lu Yi also drew his saber at the same time. As he drew his saber, his figure flickered to the side. Not only that, a solid defensive spirit rune appeared on the surface of his body. With a cracking sound, the newly formed defensive rune was struck by the long spear. With the point of contact as the center, cracks spread out in all directions, and the rune shattered with a bang. The power of Tan Sheng's spear was evident. However, in the instant the defensive rune was blocked, Lu Ye's body moved slightly to the side, and the long spear almost brushed past his armpit and pierced through his clothes. Lu Yi felt a burning pain on the skin beside his ribs. It was conceivable that if the defensive rune hadn't blocked at the critical moment, this spear would have pierced through his chest. If that happened, even if he didn't die, he would be crippled. Although he had brushed past death, Lu Ye's eyes were unprecedentedly clear. At this moment, the huge pressure on his soul seemed to have been relieved. The long saber in his hand blocked Xiao Yang's slash. The sharp saber light shattered with a bang and sparks flew everywhere. Xiao Yang's body shook slightly and his brow furrowed. The feeling of this saber strike made him realize that something was wrong. This Lu Yi was much stronger than he had imagined. The last time he fought with Lu Yi was in Fox Immortal Valley. At that time, Lu Yi had asked him to teach him his saber technique. At that time, Xiao Yang felt that Lu Yi was stronger than an ordinary 4th Order Cloud River Realm cultivator, but it wasn't that exaggerated. But now, the strength that Lu Yi had shown was simply astonishing. This was because the other party had actually blocked his long-prepared saber strike head-on, and it was under the circumstances that he and Tan Sheng had joined forces. What did this mean? This obviously meant that Lu Yi was qualified to fight him head-on. In a life-or-death battle, Xiao Yang didn't have time to think too much. His saber strike, which he had been so determined to kill, failed, so he took advantage of the situation to change his move. His long saber swept past Lu Ye's mountain saber and went for his neck. At such a close distance, this saber strike could be described as extremely dangerous. The mountain saber suddenly rose up, killing Xiao Yang's intentions in advance. But in the next moment, Lu Yi flew sideways as if he had been struck by lightning. Tan Sheng's spear had failed to kill Lu Yi. When it pierced through Lu Ye's armpit, it shook a little. With this shake, the long spear struck Lu Ye's ribs like a whip. Lu Yi felt the blood and qi in his abdomen tumble, and the pain in his ribs was unbearable. He could even hear the faint sound of bones breaking. Fortunately, he borrowed the force of this blow to soar into the air and rush to the side. Behind him was the 100 Formation Pagoda, so there was no way out. In front of him was Tan Sheng and Xiao Yang, so if he wanted to survive he could only break through to the side. Tan Sheng's spear strike had injured him, but it had also given him an opportunity to take advantage of it. "Where do you think you're going?" Xiao Yang was furious. The sound of his saber rang out as he caught up with Lu Yi at an extremely fast speed and stabbed his saber straight at Lu Ye's back. He was from the Wild Saber sect and had cultivated for a long time. In terms of saber skills he was much stronger than Lu Yi. The only thing he lacked compared to Lu Yi was experience in life and death battles. This wasn't to say that he lacked experience in this area. At his level of cultivation, there was no cultivator who hadn't experienced a few life and death crises. It was just that Lu Yi had a place like the Mirage Realm to train. Ever since he obtained the Breath Fruit Core, he had died countless times in the Mirage Realm. Xiao Yang didn't have this kind of convenience. Therefore, in the face of a life and death crisis, Lu Yi had experience that ordinary people couldn't compare to. At this moment, the Heart's Eye secret technique played a crucial role. The aura of death followed behind him like a shadow. If it were any other cultivator they would have turned around to block. However, Lu Yi didn't even look at it. The moment Xiao Yang's saber was about to reach him, he activated a defensive spirit rune. This defensive rune still couldn't block Xiao Yang's saber and shattered the moment the tip of the saber pierced over. The tip of the saber pierced 3 inches into Lu Ye's flesh, almost piercing his internal organs, but it was enough to exhaust the power of Xiao Yang's saber. A monstrous heat wave swept out. Somewhere in the crowd, 2 lifelike fire dragons shook their heads and swung their tails as they rushed towards Lu Yi. It was Chu Yun and Zhou Pei. The 2 of them were Dharma cultivators, so their reaction speed was slightly slower than Xiao Yang and Tan Sheng's. It wasn't until Lu Yi fought with them that they used their techniques. But it was just the right time. At this moment, Lu Yi was injured by Xiao Yang and the defensive barrier behind him shattered. The 2 fire dragons slammed into Lu Ye's back one after the other. Lu Yi was enveloped in a sea of flames. The huge impact caused him to spit out a mouthful of blood, which evaporated in the scorching heat. Immediately after, under the gaze of countless people, Lu Ye's figure, wrapped in flames, broke through a layer of ripples and disappeared without a trace. The situation was the same as when he sent the 6th Order cultivator flying with his saber in the safety passage. Chapter 680. Other than the safe passage from 100 Array City and the 1,000-meter radius around the 100 Array Pagoda, there were all kinds of spirit arrays within 30 miles of the 100 Array Pagoda. These spirit arrays were left behind by array cultivators who came to the 100 Array Pagoda to cultivate since ancient times. Due to the unique resonance of the 100 Array Pagoda and the accumulation of time, these spirit arrays were far more powerful than ordinary spirit arrays, even if they were left behind by Cloud River Realm cultivators. There were many danger zones in the Cloud River battlefield, such as those occupied by overlord-level demon generals or some natural danger zones. But if all the danger zones were ranked, the area around the 100-array pagoda would definitely be in the top 3. One of the people who ambushed Lu Yi in the safe passage was sent into this danger zone by Lu Yi. It was unknown whether he was dead or alive. After a few days, Lu Yi followed in his footsteps. Xiao Yang raised his saber and frowned as he watched Lu Ye's figure disappear. He was powerless to stop him unless he was willing to chase after him. But he wasn't an array cultivator, so he didn't dare to rashly enter such a danger zone. Even the array cultivators present didn't have the guts to enter such a place. The sudden change shocked everyone present. Although array cultivators from both camps came to the 100-array pagoda to train all year round, no one had ever fought here. After all, they were all here to improve their attainments in array Dao. It would be unreasonable to fight. So, the atmosphere here had always been harmonious. Even if the array cultivators belonged to different camps, they could still compare their skills and verify what they had learned. But on this day the peace was finally broken. Fortunately, the battle ended quickly. An array cultivator who came out of the 100-array pagoda was sent into the danger zone by 4 Cloud River Realm 9th Order cultivators. That's Luya? Someone in the crowd suddenly asked. Affected by the huge amount of information, Lu Yi instinctively put the amber into his spirit beast bag when he came out of the 100-array pagoda, completely forgetting to wear his mask. When he appeared, many people saw him. Naturally, there were people who recognized him. The crowd was in an uproar. The incident of 20 million Demon Ridge cultivators being poisoned to death in the mine had caused an uproar. After all, it was too shocking. Although some time had passed, the storm still hadn't subsided. Even the array cultivators who cultivated here all year round had heard that Myriad Demon Ridge was tracking Lu Ye's whereabouts. But they didn't expect him to appear in the 100-array pagoda and be killed as soon as he appeared. Recalling Lu Ye's figure wrapped in flames when he finally fell into the danger zones, no one thought that he had any hope of surviving under such circumstances. After all, the array cultivators were 9 9th Order cultivators. Xiao Yang turned his head to look at Chu Yun and Zhou Pei. Whether Lu Yi was dead or not, the two of them were the ones who knew best. After a moment of silence, Chu Yun and Zhou Pei shook their heads. If Lu Yi died, their contribution points would definitely change. There would also be blue fluorescent battle imprints floating towards them, but none of this happened. Every one of the 4 who attacked Lu Yi had injured him, and he was wrapped in 2 spirit techniques that turned him into a ball of fire. How was he still alive? How tough was Lu Ye's life? Tan Xing's expression was also a little ugly. To be honest, it was really surprising that Lu Yi could survive. Thinking back to Lu Ye's growth since he met him, Tan Xing couldn't help but shudder because he could feel that Lu Ye's cultivation had improved again. Now he had reached the 6th Order Cloud River realm. Back in the hunting ground, Lu Yi could only flee in panic like a stray dog when he was being chased by him. But now Lu Yi could still survive under the joint attack of him and Xiao Yang. During this period of time, it could be said that he had watched Lu Yi grow at an astonishing rate. "Brother Xia, if you don't kill the snake, there will always be hidden dangers," Tan Xing said softly. How could Xiao Yang not know this? These days he and Tan Xing had been trying to take Lu Ye's life, but they rarely had the chance to fight. This time they were the closest to success, but they still failed. Thinking so, he said loudly, "Fellow Taoists of Myriad Demon Ridge, this wild saber sect Xiao Yang has a request. Can you please break the spirit array and find the trace of the person who escaped?" Xiao Yang had also heard of the danger zone outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. He didn't dare to barge in like this. However, most of the people gathered here were array cultivators. If the array cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge could join forces and break the array, Lu Yi would have nowhere to hide. If he was alive, he wanted to see him. If he was dead, he wanted to see his corpse. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to rest easy in the future. The Wild Saber sect was a famous first-grade sect, and Xiao Yang had a 9th Order cultivation. As soon as he opened his mouth, an array master shouted in the crowd, "Dare I ask fellow Taoist Xia, is the person who escaped just now Lu Yi of Jade Blood sect?" Although there were already people who recognized Lu Yi and said his name, among those present, only Xiao Yang and the others had actually seen Lu Yi in person. Until there was conclusive evidence, no one could be sure that it was Lu Yi. At this time, Xiao Yang naturally wouldn't hide it. He nodded and said, "Yes, that is Lu Yi of Jade Blood sect. It really is him." The array master who spoke gritted his teeth. "This bastard has done all kinds of evil, killing our Myriad Demon Ridge cultivators everywhere. His evil deeds are too numerous to be recorded, but he still dares to come to the 100 Array Tower. As an array master, this Zhang is ashamed to be associated with such a person. Fellow Daoist Xia, count me in to break the spirit array. As soon as one person spoke, more array masters echoed, and for a moment, there was a chorus of voices. However, there were many people from Grand Heaven Alliance present, and all of them frowned. But in this situation they didn't dare to act rashly, otherwise, it would inevitably lead to a chaotic battle. There were too many cultivators gathered here. Once the battle broke out, not to mention the fact that there was no one in charge here, they wouldn't be able to form an army. Even Xia Liang and the other Ninth Order cultivators were a huge deterrent. If the battle really broke out, Grand Heaven Alliance would definitely suffer. So, even if they were unhappy, no Grand Heaven Alliance cultivators stood out to refute. The situation was very good for Xia Liang and the others. After a while, under the leadership of Xia Liang, Tan Sheng, and the others, many myriad Demon Ridge Array Masters began to break the spirit arrays in the danger zones. This was unprecedented. Although there were many spirit arrays in the danger zones and they were very dangerous, if the myriad Demon Ridge really worked together, they could raise the danger zones to the ground. At that time it would be fine if Lu Yi died, but if he didn't he would have nowhere to hide. The formation cultivators who had been harmonious suddenly became very distinct. The myriad Demon Ridge Array Masters were working hard to break the spirit arrays, while those from Grand Heaven Alliance gathered together and watched from afar. Xia Liang and the others ignored them. Finding Lu Ye's whereabouts was more important and it wasn't time to complicate matters. In the Grand Heaven Alliance camp, the cultivator surnamed Luo looked at the 100 Formation Pagoda with stormy waves in his heart. Everyone's attention was drawn to the conflict just now, but only he who was prejudiced by his first impression noticed some abnormalities. Or rather, the others noticed it too, but they didn't think much about it. Lu Yi came out of the 100 Formation Pagoda. Array Masters generally didn't spend much time challenging the pagoda. If they failed, they would be teleported out. Even if they succeeded, they could only stay in it for a while. Moreover, the 100 Formation Pagoda had been resonating recently, which was a benefit that Array Masters dreamed of. So, since a few days ago, no Array Masters entered the 100 Formation Pagoda and those who were inside came out early. Until today when Lu Yi appeared. In other words, Lu Yi had been in the 100 Formation Pagoda for the past few days. He had also silently calculated that the 100 Formation Pagoda had resonated a total of 34 times recently. Excluding the first time, it would be 33 times, which corresponded to the number of floors in the 100 Formation Pagoda. He had always thought that it was Lu Yi who was challenging the pagoda. But if that was really the case, then it was too exaggerated. In the Sky Yen sect, he had passed 33 floors in one go and triggered 33 resonations. In the Cloud River battlefield, he could also pass 33 floors in one go and trigger 33 resonations? What kind of terrifying Array Dao talent was this? What kind of profound Array Dao attainments did the current Lu Yi have? From what he knew, the highest record of the 100 Formation Pagoda in the Cloud River battlefield was the 25th floor. In other words, no one had ever passed the 26th floor. And the one who had left this record was an Array Dao Grandmaster from 300 years ago. That person's Array Dao attainments were unprecedented and had reached a height that no one in the 9 states had ever reached. Even that great Grandmaster didn't pass all 25 levels in one go when he challenged the 100 Formation Pagoda. Instead, he did it multiple times. Especially after the 20th level, he could only pass one level each time. He had to wait until his attainments in Array Dao improved before attempting the next level. At that time, this Array Master was famous throughout the 9 provinces. With his strength, he could have lived until now. Unfortunately, this guy was a bit of a playboy. In the end, because of jealousy, he was killed by an expert from the same camp. Was really a pity. Passing the 25th floor already gave him such a dazzling achievement. It was hard to imagine what Lu Ye's Array Dao attainments would be in the future after passing 33 floors in one go and triggering 33 resonations. If such a person died just like that, it would definitely be a great loss to the Grand Heaven Alliance. But in the current situation, even if he wanted to save him, he was powerless unless he could incite the other Array Dao Grandmasters of the Grand Heaven Alliance to fight to the death with the myriad demons Ridge. As this thought flashed through his mind, Cultivator Luo sighed softly. He had clearly seen the scene of Lu Yi falling into the danger zone. Under such a terrifying attack, it would have been difficult for him to survive. He was probably already dead by now, right? What a pity, what a pity. The Array Dao Grandmasters of the Myriad Demons Ridge were breaking the array on a large scale. Xia Liang and the rest stood at the side and waited. At the same time, They were also vigilant of the Array Dao Grandmasters of the Grand Heaven Alliance. He turned his head to look at Chu Yun and Zhou Pei. The two of them shook their heads slowly. The former said, "He's not dead yet." He was extremely puzzled. How could he not be dead? 7017K. Chapter 681. The four people who attacked Lu Yi were all 9th Order Cloud River Realm cultivators, and each of them had injured him. Tan Sheng's spear hit Lu Ye's waist, while Xiao Yang's saber pierced Lu Ye's body, breaking his spirit energy shield. Then 2 powerful spirit techniques wrapped around him and turned him into a ball of fire. In that situation, it was equivalent to Lu Yi taking 2 spirit techniques head-on without any protection. In all fairness, no matter which of the 4 people suffered such treatment, they wouldn't have survived. But why didn't Lu Yi die? Soon, the spirit array where Lu Yi disappeared was broken. Xiao Liang immediately went forward to investigate, but all he saw was blood splattered on the ground, but there was no trace of Lu Yi. This guy really didn't die. This is troublesome. Thinking about it, the best situation right now was for Lu Yi to struggle at death's door. Although he hadn't died yet, he wouldn't live for long. If that was the case, then he would have done his best this time. Even if he couldn't get Lu Yi's body to exchange for the huge bounty, at least this malignant tumor would be eradicated. Without Lu Yi's deterrence, he could boldly seek revenge on Li Baxian. But this was only the most ideal situation after all. He had to consider other possible scenarios. For example, Lu Yi was only seriously injured and was currently hiding somewhere in the danger zones to heal himself. If that was the case, he could find a way to break the spirit array and leave. This guy's attainments in the Tao of Arrays were extremely high, and after coming out of the 100 Formation Pagoda, his Array Tao cultivation must have improved again. Thinking of this, Xiao Liang couldn't help but feel a little irritated. Ever since he came into contact with Lu Yi, everything had gone wrong. In order to hunt this guy down, he had already wasted several months of cultivation. While the myriad Demon Ridge Array cultivators were breaking the spirit arrays, Lu Yi passed through the spirit arrays with a pale face, secretly feeling lucky. Fortunately, the spirit technique that attacked him at the last moment was a fire attribute spirit technique, allowing him to urge the power of his talent tree to save his life. If it had been any other type of spirit technique, he might not have survived. Xiao Liang and the others were curious as to why he didn't die under such an attack. If they knew how he killed Sacred Flame Sex Huo Liao Yuan, they wouldn't have so many doubts. With the innate skill tree, Lu Ye's resistance to fire element spells was unmatched by anyone else. However, even though he could block the power of the spell, he couldn't block the impact of the spell itself. Therefore, he was still injured by the impact of the 2 fire dragons. Moreover, before that, Xiao Liang had stabbed him in the back, 3 inches into his flesh. His current state could be said to be heavily injured. The enormous pressure on his soul had already made him dizzy and his thoughts sluggish. Now that his physical body had also suffered heavy injuries, it could be said that he was in an extremely bad state. Fortunately, he managed to escape into the danger zone covered by countless formations in time. The place he had entered was not chosen at random. Before he entered the 100 Formation Pagoda, he had already anticipated the situation he would encounter when he exited the pagoda. The reason why he insisted on entering the pagoda and risked his life was because he wanted to use this danger zone to escape. Before he entered the 100 Formation Pagoda, he had deliberately observed his surroundings. The place he had entered was not far from the exit of the 100 Formation Pagoda. There was an illusory formation that didn't have any destructive power. Therefore, when he exited the pagoda, although Lu Yi didn't remember many things in time, after he was attacked, he immediately remembered the escape route he had left behind. With the help of Tan Sheng's spear, he escaped in that direction. If Xiao Liang and the others had the guts to pursue him, he would really have been doomed. Unfortunately, in the face of such a strange formation, who would dare to pursue him? Only then did he have the hope of escaping. The illusory formation he had entered had been operating for an unknown period of time. Its power was ridiculously great. Any Cloud River tier cultivator who entered would probably be filled with illusions, unable to distinguish north from south. However, Lu Ye's soul was ultimately much stronger than cultivators of the same cultivation level. He was only slightly affected and was fine as usual. He didn't break the formation. Instead, he chose to use his own unique method to sneak out of the range of the formation. This way, the formation could still be used to block any possible pursuers. Observing the construction of his Insight Spirit inscriptions, Lu Yi constantly observed his surroundings. He saw that there were many hidden spirit arrays in all directions. The number of them was shocking. However, under the effect of his insight spirit inscriptions, these spirit arrays basically had no place to hide. This saved Lu Yi a lot of time. He passed through the gaps between the spirit arrays and continued forward. However, he didn't go far before he reached a dead end. Looking around, he saw that the different spirit arrays were tightly connected, leaving not even a single gap. In this way, unless Lu Yi stayed where he would inevitably enter an unknown spirit array. Helpless, he could only try his best to choose a spirit array that didn't look so dangerous, sneak in, and leave from another direction. Lu Yi continued forward like this for more than 2 hours, but he still couldn't leave the danger zone covered by so many spirit arrays. Furthermore, there was another embarrassing thing that happened, which was that he had lost his way. Logically speaking, this kind of thing shouldn't happen to him. After all, he was still a 6th order Cloud River Realm cultivator. However, there were many spirit arrays operating here, which seriously interfered with his judgment. Coupled with his poor condition at the moment, his soul and body were under double pressure, so for a moment, something that shouldn't have happened actually happened. Feeling a little dizzy, Lu Yi stopped. Since he couldn't leave this place in one go, he could only quickly heal his injuries. Although he didn't know where he was now, even if there were pursuers behind him, it wouldn't be easy to find him. So, for the time being, his situation was safe. First, he had to heal his injuries. After he recovered, he would find a way to leave this place. Making up his mind, Lu Yi took Hooper out of his spirit beast bag and asked Yi to keep watch while he sat down cross-legged. He had already swallowed a healing pill when he was on his way here, so his injuries were improving. The knife wound caused by Xiao Yang wasn't serious, only 3 inches into his flesh. It was just a flesh wound. With his physique and the effect of the healing pill, it wasn't difficult for him to recover. The real damage caused by that knife was that it had broken through his defense. The serious injury was the injury to his internal organs. Tan Sheng's spear was like a whip, fiercely whipping his waist, causing his internal organs to shift and his ribs to crack. After that, he was hit by the 2 fire dragons, so his internal injuries were even more serious. However, Lu Yi had suffered more serious injuries before, so it wasn't a big problem. As long as he had enough time, he could recover. The most important thing now was to quickly comprehend and digest the huge amount of knowledge about spirit arrays in his mind and relieve the pressure on his soul. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to focus on many things. Letting the healing pill take effect, Lu Yi urged the river of spirit energy to cycle back and forth, healing his injuries. At the same time, he immersed himself in comprehending the huge benefits he had obtained from the 100 Formation Pagoda. Time passed by. While Jianghu was meditating and recuperating, outside the 100 Formation Pagoda, the array formation cultivators of the Myriad Devil Ridge were in full swing. Array formations that had existed for many years were being broken one after another. The array formation cultivators of the Grand Heaven Alliance were furious but did not dare to say anything. No matter what the original intention was, these remaining formations outside the 100 Formation Pagoda were treasures left behind by their ancestors. Many formation cultivators would study these formations when they had nothing to do and verify what they had learned. But now, these formations that had existed for who knows how many years were being broken one by one. Looking at the momentum of the Myriad Devil Ridge, it seemed that they were going to break all the formations. If that really happened, the area outside the 100 Formation Pagoda would no longer be known as a dangerous place. Of course, it wouldn't be easy to completely flatten the numerous formations that covered a radius of 30 miles. After a hurried day, Lu Yi opened his eyes and slowly exhaled in a hidden formation 10 miles away from the 100 Formation Pagoda. The gift from the 100 Formation Pagoda wasn't easy to digest, but after a day of unremitting effort, the pressure on his soul had finally lessened. At the very least, it wouldn't affect his thinking like before. There was no need to rush the rest. It wouldn't be too late to slowly digest it in the future. His physical injuries hadn't fully recovered yet, but they were no longer a problem. After a day's delay, it was time to leave. Lu Yi stood up and called out to Yi, "Let's go." Yi responded and rushed into Hu Po's body. In a situation where she might encounter outsiders at any time, she generally wouldn't show herself. Everyone knew that Lu Yi had Hu Po by his side, but very few people knew that he had Yi by his side. At certain critical moments, Yi could play a crucial role. Hu Po jumped onto Lu Yi's shoulder and squatted down. He narrowed his eyes and assumed a lazy posture. It was worth mentioning that Hu Po and Yi's current cultivation was equivalent to the 6th Order Cloud River realm. Lu Yi had broken through to the 6th order when he passed the 15th floor of the 100 Formation Pagoda, while Yi and Hupa had broken through a few floors later. Looking at it this way, the gap between her and Lu Ye's cultivation wasn't that big. Lu Ye's cultivation progressed rapidly because he swallowed a large number of spirit pills every day. Even without a spirit stick to use, his cultivation was still growing little by little. This was something that no other cultivator could achieve. And the main reason why the two little ones could keep up with Lu Ye's cultivation speed was because of Hupa. During this period of time, he had always been lazy, as if he didn't get enough sleep. In fact, he wasn't lazy, but he had been digesting monster cores. Lu Yi ate pills and Hupa also ate pills. The difference was that Lu Yi ate source spirit pills, while Hupa ate monster cores of monster beasts. The energy contained in monster cores was much greater than source spirit pills, which was why Hupa had always been like that. He spent more of his energy on digesting monster cores. In addition, Lu Ye's cultivation was ultimately just his own. But the two little ones were different. Their cultivation was always double the happiness. No matter whose strength increased, it would be beneficial to the other. Lu Yi wouldn't be surprised if their cultivation surpassed his one day. With the support of the Insight Spirit inscriptions, Lu Yi searched for the flaws in the spirit array. Soon he broke out of the spirit array while keeping it intact. To be continued. Chapter 682. In fact, the best way to escape from such a dangerous place was to fly away on a magic tool. However, Lu Yi had tried all sorts of places and found that they were all covered by the flight restriction formation. He couldn't fly at all. Moreover, the flight restriction formation was the most powerful formation he had encountered so far. Even with his current foundation, he could barely fly 7 feet above the ground. This was obviously not something a Cloud River tier formation cultivator could do. Thinking back to the information and rumors he had bought about the 100 Formation Pagoda from the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance, Lu Yi understood that this should be an inexplicable mutation. There were many formations in the dangerous place, and the flight restriction formation definitely existed. However, it shouldn't be this powerful, nor should it cover such a large area. However, the 100 Formation Pagoda would often emit strange rhythms. These rhythms not only had the effect of enlightening formation cultivators, but also caused many of the formations in the dangerous place to undergo some unpredictable changes. This was also the reason why the formations in the dangerous place were so extraordinarily powerful. Many common-sense things were no longer useful in such a dangerous place. Lu Yi couldn't help but suspect that this mutation had something to do with him being unable to escape from this dangerous place. He seemed to be moving in one direction, but in reality this might not be the case. This was a little difficult. If this was really the case, unless he chose to completely destroy all the formations he encountered, it would be very difficult to escape from here. Inside a trap formation, Lu Yi stopped and looked at a skeleton in front of him. Along the way he had encountered several skeletons like this. These were obviously formation cultivators who had rashly entered the dangerous place to break the formations because of their superior abilities. In the end it was easy to enter, but they couldn't leave. In the end they were trapped to death here. Judging from the traces left behind on these skeletons, they had all died in different eras. Most of them had died from the power of the array formation. However, the skeletons in front of him had a dent in the skull and the entire skull was cracked. This was clearly suicide. It was hard to imagine how desperate a Cloud River tier cultivator would be to choose to end his life in such a way. Lu Yi put away the storage pouch beside the skeleton. Just like the storage pouches he had put away before, the restriction locks inside had long since been broken. Without a cultivator's spiritual power pouring in for a long time, the restriction locks would not be able to function for a long time. After a brief inspection, Lu Yi didn't find anything good in the storage bag, but he didn't care. He didn't even have the intention to collect the corpse. He stepped forward and passed through the formation. After this trip to the 100 Formation Pagoda, his array Dao attainments had become much stronger than before. Now, he was constantly digesting the 100 Formation Pagoda's gifts as he walked through the danger zone. If it was in the past, he would have to expend quite a bit of effort to pass through the layers of formations after falling into such a dangerous place. But now it was as easy as breathing and drinking water. This kind of dangerous land that could make it difficult for formation cultivators at the Cloud River tier to move an inch was as easy as walking on flat ground for him. With a single step, he entered another formation. At a certain moment, when Lu Yi passed through another spirit array, he suddenly raised his head and looked ahead, a look of surprise in his eyes. Along the way, all kinds of formations emerged one after another. Basically, they were all connected to each other without the slightest gap. However, the space in front of him didn't show any signs of being enveloped by a formation. This was a little strange. What entered Lu Ye's field of vision was a high platform that was several square meters in size. It was strange that there was such a thing in the danger zone outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. What made Lu Yi even more curious was that there was a vaguely familiar figure on the high platform. The figure was walking back and forth on the platform, but seemed to have encountered some problem and was scratching his ears and cheeks. That figure was the cultivator surnamed Yu, whom he had sent flying with a single blow in the safe passage from 100 Formation City to the 100 Formation Pagoda. At that time, this person was injured by Lu Yi and fell into the danger zone. Lu Yi didn't chase after him because he felt that the other party probably wouldn't survive. He didn't expect to meet him here. Was this guy so lucky? On that strange high platform, the cultivator surnamed Yu was busy scratching his ears and cheeks. Suddenly he felt something strange and looked up, meeting Lu Ye's mocking gaze. His entire body instantly cracked. "It's you." The cultivator surnamed Yu couldn't believe his eyes. How did this bastard Lu Ye find this place? Previously he was sent flying by Lu Ye's blow and fell into the danger zone. Fortunately, he didn't trigger the formation and fled in panic. He didn't know how he ended up here. Seeing such a high platform, he naturally had to study it carefully. Unfortunately, Lu Ye appeared before him before he could find any clues. "My opportunity," the cultivator wailed inwardly. Although he didn't want to give up the opportunity on the high platform, he also knew that he was no match for Lu Ye. Lu Ye's previous blow had completely scared him out of his wits. Therefore, after recognizing Lu Ye, this person decisively fled to the back, instantly crashing into a spirit array behind him. However, his luck didn't seem to be very good this time. Following a violent buzzing and flames, a powerful formation seemed to have been activated. After a few miserable screams, everything returned to normal. Lu Yi watched silently. Even if the other party hadn't run away, he would have killed him anyway. However, the cultivator's surnamed Yu's decisiveness was still surprising. Well, it saved him the trouble of attacking. Looking up at the high platform, Lu Ye's interest was piqued. He'd never heard of such a high platform hidden in the danger zone outside the 100 Formation Pagoda. Even the information he'd purchased from the Heavenly Secret Commerce Alliance didn't mention it. It wasn't strange when he thought about it. No one dared trespass into such a danger zone. The skeletons Lu Yi encountered along the way were the fate of trespassers. Moreover, in such an environment, trespassers wouldn't be able to distinguish north from south. It wouldn't be easy to find the high platform. What was this high platform for? Lu Ye's curiosity was piqued. He leaped up and landed on the high platform. Although he didn't know how long the high platform had existed here, it was well preserved. Moreover, the platform looked like it was chiseled from a huge piece of withered jade. It was as smooth as a mirror and didn't have any veins around it. However, right above the high platform, there were many complicated patterns that were intertwined. At a glance, it gave off an extremely chaotic feeling. Lu Ye's heart trembled as he focused his attention. The complex veins on the high platform looked like a transportation formation. However, it was slightly different from the transportation formations Lu Yi had learned about. Formations were like spirit veins. The veins weren't unchanging. Every formation and every spirit vein was formed by countless yin and yang elements intertwined. The changes within were endless. However, sometimes, a slight change could cause a huge increase or decrease in the effectiveness of a formation. What was certain was that the veins carved on the high platform were definitely a transportation formation. However, Lu Yi wasn't sure what kind of effect this transportation formation had. Moreover, under his observation, he discovered that this transportation formation wasn't complete. The void spirit veins at the core were slightly damaged. If he wanted to know the effects of this transportation formation, he'd have to repair it. No wonder that cultivator surnamed Yu was scratching his head as if he'd encountered a difficult problem. It wasn't that Lu Yi was underestimating him. No matter how skilled he was in formations, it was impossible for him to repair this transportation formation with his cultivation of the Cloud River tier. Perhaps, this was the way out? Lu Ye's heart skipped a beat. He'd shuttled back and forth among the many formations in this fearsome land, yet he still couldn't find a way out. However, there was a transportation formation here. This naturally made him think. Perhaps he could use this transportation formation to leave this place? Even if it wasn't, this formation had piqued Lu Ye's interest. If he could repair this formation, it would be quite beneficial to him. he immediately made a decision. He'd repair this formation and then test its power. Perhaps he'd be able to escape this place in one fell swoop. As soon as he thought of this, Lu Yi immediately got to work. He'd set up a transportation formation before. The 100 Formation Pagodas test also included a transportation formation test. Thus, it wasn't difficult for him to repair this formation. The difficult part was that the veins on the high platform were carved. If he wanted to repair this formation, did he have to use the mountain pan saber to carve the missing veins? He pulled out the saber and tested it. To his shock, he discovered that the high platform's material was abnormally hard. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't leave a mark on it. What kind of material was this? Although Lu Yi had reached the Cloud River tier, he didn't know much about the natural treasures of the 9 provinces. He couldn't recognize what material this high platform was made of. However, such a hard material had to be worth a lot. Yet, it had been chiseled into a massive platform to support a transportation formation. He didn't know who had such a method, nor did he know why it would appear here. After trying for a while, Lu Yi had no choice but to give up. Even the mountain pan saber, which had been enhanced with the double peak sharpness spirit mark, couldn't leave a mark on it. He didn't know what else he could do. Perhaps he could directly use his spiritual power to repair the formation. With this thought, Lu Yi immediately raised his hand and pressed it against the high platform. His spiritual power surged and poured into the veins. The high platform, which had been sealed for countless years, slowly blossomed with light at this moment. As Lu Yi poured his spiritual power into it, the veins lit up until they reached the damaged area. Lu Yi controlled his own spiritual energy and used his own ideas to completely replenish the damaged formation. The moment the entire formation was completed, a sudden change occurred. Lu Yi felt an irresistible suction force coming from his palm. The spiritual power in his body was flowing out at an unimaginable speed, like a flood breaking through a dam. This change shocked Lu Yi greatly. He hurriedly tried to withdraw his hand, but he couldn't do it. In less than 10 breaths' time, his spiritual power had been completely depleted. Oh whoa! Crouching on Lu Ye's shoulder, Hoopa also sensed that something was wrong. Its tiger eyes widened. The space around them began to distort. This was a sign that the transportation formation was about to take effect. Hoopa turned around and hugged Lu Ye's head. The feeling of being transported was unforgettable. If it had known that it would be transported, it would definitely have asked to hide in the Spirit Beast pouch. To be continued. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.